is an epidemic of mass murder being committed by a virtual army of unidentified assassins. It seems to be a sudden, general explosion of mass homicide. Consistent reports from witnesses to the effect that people who acted as though they were in a kind of trance were killing and eating their victims prompted authorities to examine the bodies of some of the victims. Medical authorities in Cumberland have concluded that in all cases, the killers are eating the flesh of the people they murdered.
Incredible as they seem, are not the results of mass hysteria. First eyewitness accounts of this grisly development came from people who were understandably frightened and almost incoherent. Officials and newsmen first discounted their eyewitness descriptions as being beyond belief. However, reports persisted. Medical examinations of some of the victims bore out the fact that they had been partially devoured. I think we have some late word that's just arriving, and I'll interrupt to bring this to you. This is the latest disclosure in a report from National Civil Defense Headquarters in Washington. It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder. A widespread investigation of reports from funeral homes, morgues, and hospitals has concluded that the unburied dead are coming back to life and seeking human victims. It's hard for us here to believe what we're reporting to you, but it does seem to be a fact. When this emergency first began, radio and television was advising people to stay inside, behind locked doors for safety. Well, that situation has now changed. We're able to report a definite course of action. Civil defense machinery has been organized to provide rescue stations with food, shelter, medical treatment, and protection by armed National Guardsmen. Stay tuned to the broadcasting stations in your local area for this list of rescue stations. This list will be repeated throughout our news coverage. Look for the name of the rescue station nearest you. Make your way to that location as soon as possible.
No longer seek occupancy in private residences, no matter how safe or well protected they may be.
Everybody caught maybe 5% of the food available in the human body.
The kind of thing.
With that small amount, the body is usually intact enough to be mobile when it revives.
What are you saying? I mean, you scientists.
Dummies!
You're suggesting...
Dummies! Dummies!
Excuse me. Listen, quiet.
One wonders whether it's worth saving. Why don't we drop bombs in all the big cities?
You're probably serious.
I'm deadly serious. What are the choices? They won't run out of food, young lady. That's the problem, you see. And they won't run out of food while we're still alive.
We can lift you out to safety. Please answer my call if you can hear me.
We've got to remain logical. We've got to. There's no choice. It has to be. It's that or the end.
We are live. What is going on, everybody? Happy Sunday night to you all. Missed you guys last weekend. I was, what do they say in the professional news industry? I was on assignment last weekend. We'll just say that. Took a wrong turn, ended up in Pittsburgh last week. Last second little trip. We'll talk about that here in a second, and share my experience last weekend. It was a short little trip, last second thing. I was there, I left on Saturday, got there Saturday night, came back on Monday, But we did some pretty cool stuff. Met up with our old buddy Larry, friend of the channel, old Lawrence Vincent, up in Pittsburgh, and got to hang out with him, spend some time with him, do some pretty fun shit. And I'll share that with you all when the time comes for that. But we'll discuss it. But tonight, the big topic, and it's one of those topics that Romero fans and Night of the Living Dead fans have talked about and discussed and debated for years and years and years. And there's opinions on both sides. But what if in 1968 George A. Romero released Night of the Flesh Eaters instead of Night of the Living Dead? How would that have affected George's career? How would that have affected the legacy of the film? How would that have affected the careers of John Russo and Russ Streiner? So many things went into play there because, of course, the big thing about that is if they kept it Night of the Flesh Eaters, the copyright would have still been on the film, so it wouldn't have been lost to public domain all these years. Is that a good thing for the legacy and the success of Night of the Living Dead, or was it a bad thing? That's the debate. So we're going to talk about that. Dig into. I was doing some last second cramming here before we went online or went on the air. So I got some opinions. I got a pretty interesting. I guess it's a theory. I guess an interesting theory on why the copyright wasn't restored onto the print of the film when they changed the title. How that could have happened, because Continental Releasing, the Walter Reed organization, it wasn't like their first rodeo. They were releasing quite a bit at the time. So you would think like a company like that would kind of know to look for something like that. Like I'm sure George and John and Russ and all those guys. They probably, didn't know, the ins and outs of the copyright laws and shit. So they may not have known, but you would think that would be something that a distribution company like Continental would have caught. But I have a theory on why that was. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But let's see who's on the chat tonight. Hope you guys are doing well. You're burning up the chat already. So let's see here. First in the room tonight, Rick, the North Going Llama. What's going on, man? Good to see you. Always good to say your name. The man himself, Matt Landrum, which we'll see here in just a second. Hint, hint. Matt's in the house. Good to see Matt as always. Bonnie Bailey. Good to see Bonnie. How you doing, Bonnie? Hope you're doing well. Up there in Chi-Town, the Windy City as it is. Coming from all the way downstairs is the one and only Jade Purdy. What's going on? Synthetic, what's going on, brother? Good to see you. Let's see, who else? I lost my place here for a second. I looked away for a second, and I ended up scrolling away. Hang on. Here we are. Ed, what's going on, man? Ed Trader, Music and Entertainment. How about them Eagles? Told you they were going to win. I actually have a pretty cool story about the Super Bowl. I actually had a really fun Super Bowl. Had nothing to do with the game or who won, who lost. Didn't really give a shit about either way. But my cousin sent me one of those links that if you join, I think it was like FanDuel or one of those. I think it's FanDuel. If you join, you put $5 bet on something. If you win the bet, you get $300 worth of free bonus bets. So I bet on the Chiefs to beat the Bills in the AFC Championship game. Bet the $5, won, so I got the $300 worth of bonus bets. So for the Super Bowl, I don't really give a shit either way. I don't really care for the Eagles or the Chiefs. And just to make it more fun for me and my fiance, I decided, we sat down and decided, okay, let's take this $300 worth of free bets and just throw out all kinds of random goofy-ass bets. So we did that. As the game was going on, we weren't hitting on anything. We weren't making any money. I think we had made like $30 at that point off $300 worth of bets. It was pretty pathetic. But one bet I did tell her to make, and I'll take credit for this. I don't care what she says. Don't listen to her. Is we put $30 on Xavier Worthy, which I know a lot of people could care less about this conversation, but $30 on Xavier Worthy, who's a wide receiver for the Chiefs, the rookie wide receiver for the Chiefs, who hadn't really done anything all year. Put $30 on him to hit the over on 150 total yards for the game, receiving yards, which is, long odds for that because he hadn't really done anything all year and he's a rookie and yada, yada, yada. But I had a feeling kind of seeing him play through the playoffs. I was like, they're kind of using him a little more. He's kind of catching on. Why not? Let's see, it's free. We're not losing anything. So we put $30 on that. So by the end of the game, the Chiefs had already been blown out. I mean, it was not much of a game, not much to watch. But at the end of the game, a minute left in the game or whatever, Mahomes throws that 50-yard touchdown pass to Xavier Worthy to put him over the 150. And so we ended up winning like $900 on that from the Super Bowl. So we were stoked. So I had a great Super Bowl. I don't care who won, who lost. I was just like, I won. Damn it, I won that night. But yeah, so congratulations, Eagles, representing the great state of Philadelphia, or the great state of Pennsylvania, the great state of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I mean, you're saying cool intro, thank you, I appreciate it. Something I threw together this week. Thought it was pretty cool. I might just keep it as that. It's kind of simple and fun, and kind of covers the gambit there. Michael, what's going on, man? Michael Rajpal's in the house. Good to see you. Yeah, the great dummies. Yes, we are. I've always wondered, and I don't know if this is a stupid question or if it's like obvious and I'm just missing it. And it's somebody who's seen the movie a billion times, you'd think I would get it. The line "dummies, is that referring to us, the people that will not listen? We're all just a bunch of dummies. That's what I assume, and that's what I think it is. But then sometimes I feel like, oh, is he talking about the zombies? Are they just a bunch of dummies? Like, why are we overblowing this? They're just a bunch of idiots. I don't know. I've always gone back and forth, but I'm pretty sure it's meant to be, he's talking about us, the human race, who refuses to listen. But yeah, love that line. John Vulo, what's going on, man? Got my guitar plugged in and ready to practice while watching. Well, that's awesome, man. I figured you might have a few things to say about this one tonight. I'm interested. I'm really interested in getting your take on it. Just get your opinion on things, because if there's anybody that's been balls deep into Night of the Living Dead here lately, it's great John Vulo here. But good to see you, man. 1911 Guitar Dude's in the house. What's up, man? Hey, y'all. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Gotta love the Dr. Roush quotes. Yeah, you can't beat them. Can't be Dr. Roush, the one voice of reason in Dawn of the Dead. Well, maybe the two. Dr. Foster was kind of the other one. Robert Harbitz the second. What's going on, man? Hello, Mike. Good to be here. Glad to have you, sir. Always good to have Robert in the chat tonight. Speaking of the man himself, Larry, WGON TV. What's going on, brother? For all I know, the brains are already dead. It's the idiots that are still alive. There you go. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It would be the people. All the smart people are already dead. So, the only people left to solve this problem are the idiots. Which seems to be the case most of the time, I find. Paul Brooks is in the house saying, suddenly thirsty for an ice cold Iron City beer. Well, this just goes to show that I just recently visited Pittsburgh. If I'm drinking Iron City on the stream, it usually means I've made a trip to Pittsburgh, and I come back with a case or two of Iron City beer. So, but good to see you, man. All right, that's good to know. Sensei and Tech Check, audio and feed are fine tonight. Awesome. Yeah, I was really stressing about that. I'm trying a bunch of different shit here, trying to get it all cleared up. I don't know what the issue is. I think I'm starting to drill down on whatever it was. It's been fucking with my shit lately, but Rick saying, you mean just to change the title? Yeah, I mean, the changing of the title from Flesh Eaters to Night of the Living Dead, I mean, the big thing is they lost the copyright because of that. If they would have just kept it the same, the movie would have been copywritten and, it wouldn't have fallen into public domain. So that's the big, question, well, what would that have meant for the film's legacy, the careers of the people that made it? So that's the big question. But also, I mean, just the title itself. I mean, Night of the Flesh Eaters. Does that sound like a classic horror title, like Night of the Living Dead sounds? I mean, that just sounds badass. Night of the Flesh Eaters, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that sounds just as enticing to an audience as Night of the Living Dead? I don't know about it. Yeah, it kind of just sounds more, I don't know, lowbrow almost in a way, which is what they were going for. When they were making the film, they were looking for something, exploitation film that they could sell easily and make enough money back on it to where they could, make another film. So maybe that's what they were going for, and it just happened to be, I don't know. Like I said, we'll get into it. I've been thinking about it a lot here past week or so. So, everybody saying hello. Let's see, Johnson. As far as I know, Flesh Eater was never copywritten because no title card was made for it. Only Anubis. Interesting. So I don't know. I have some theories on that, but I know Flesh Eater. So Flesh Eater was the working title, um, and I've always been confused by the Knight of Anubis title. I thought that was like the original, which I could be wrong, but I thought that was the original screenplay title that George wrote, and then they changed it to Flesh Eater to make it more, which is that's what I always heard. I'm pretty sure. But like I said, I could be wrong. I have actually heard it both ways, but I always assumed that Knight of Anubis, they kind of said, it's a little too highbrow and snooty. Like, nobody knows what Anubis means. Flesh Eater is more, marketable. But like I said, could be wrong on that. Aro Padgery, what's going on, man? Good to see you representing Bristol, England tonight, coming all the way from across the pond. Always good to see you. Mayor's in the house. Good to see Mayor as always. The Mayor. What are you the Mayor of? Curious. Wonder what your answer to that would be. Mayor of Monroeville. I think we'd be better off if that were the case. But yeah, Jade said we bought a few dozen eggs. Yeah, with our winnings. Yeah, which is how I ended up in Monroeville. Went to buy a dozen eggs. Ended up taking a left turn in Albuquerque, and I don't know how it happened, but. Rick always thought he meant were the survivors left in charge. That's what I always assumed too. But then every now and then I'm just like, it's interesting, like, because he could be talking about, the problem, like we're dealing with a bunch of dummies, kind of thing. But since Andy's addressing the naysayers around him, just like the anti-vaxxers these days, well, there you go. It makes sense. Like I said, there's total connection that you could draw from now and back then. With Dawn, the crazies. Even I think the crazies is very symbolic of recent times. Blake, what's going on, man? Blake Allen in the house. Just made another dead stream. I'm glad you did, man. Good to see you as always. The Mayor. I like the sound of that. I do too. That's pretty badass. Badass name here on YouTube. It's saying taking alcohol across state lines is bootlegging. Well, I'm from Kentucky, so it's part of my DNA. I think is bootlegging, so it's totally fine. See, Mayor says dummies. Always thought he was talking about the ventriloquists. Yeah, maybe ventriloquists, the talking heads. Matt saying, I thought Flesh Eaters was the title card that had the copyright on it. You learn something new every day. That's what I always assumed too. And like I said, we'll talk about here in just a little bit. I'll go into my theory on what happened to between Continental Releasing, the Walter Reed organization, and how could you forget that? Like, that'd be something you would think like, oh yeah, maybe we should make sure that's on there. But was it done intentionally? Maybe. I don't know. Conspiracy theories are out there. Aro says Flesh Eater sounds like just another horror film. Romero was cutting edge. Using the word dead revealed something important about the movie and suggested that it was different. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the term living dead it wasn't the first time that term had been used. They'd used it, I know, in the trailer for Last Man on Earth. They'd used the term living dead, and I think there was a movie before that called The Living Dead. But I just think that term used the way that Romero and crew used it to title Night of the Living Dead, which I think it was titled by the distribution company, although John Russo has claimed that he came up with the title in previous times in the past. But I just think the title Night of the Living Dead is more palatable to a mainstream audience, more so than Night of the Flesh Eaters. Like, you take a girl on a date and you're saying, hey, let's go see Night of the Flesh Eaters. She's going to say, oh, that sounds gross. I don't want to watch that. Night of the Living Dead, that's intriguing. There's I don't know what you'd call it there, but it's like the living dead is kind of an oxymoron almost. Like, how can you be living if you're also dead? So there's an intrigue there. I think that kind of helped the movie in terms of marketability. A bit choppy, settling out. Okay, well, hopefully we're working through it. John says the film was changed from Flesh Eaters to Anubis sometimes between December and March. The work print was finished late March, and it went out as Anubis. It was Continental in June that suggested the change. Interesting. Okay. All right. So now that the timeline is set there, was so the film itself was the world premiere. The premiere of the film was October 1st, 68. So are we talking early 68 when you're talking? Because I didn't think Continental purchased the rights or announced that they had purchased the rights or the distribution rights to Night until like later that year. Like I think it was pretty close. I think September even. I think I've read before. But I don't know. I could be wrong. We'll look at that. We'll look into it. John said, Matt, the Flesh Eater card in the thumbnail was made by someone. It's not actually real. There you go. Yeah, there was like a site. There was a site. I can't think of what the site was called, but it kind of showed you like what it would look like with all these alternate times. Like instead of Halloween, it would if it was called The Babysitter Murders, like it was originally supposed to. So that's where I grabbed that from. I thought it was pretty cool. Ara says the idea of death itself was the enemy, made this whole genre totally chilling and horrific, and importantly hopeless. I fully agree with that. I think that's the common thing, the common thread that all these movies have is like the big, the big overshadowing thing that nobody seems to really grasp is the fact that there is no winning because everybody dies. Everybody dies. There's no escaping it. Like, even if you kill every zombie on Earth and you're the last man standing, as soon as you die, you're going to come back and the zombies have won. So you're fighting a war that you cannot win because of the inevitability of death. I don't know. That's what I've always taken it out. That idea is just, disturbing to me, but very, very true. John says, I'm here to help correct some of the false narratives that have been pushed out there. Okay, there you go. Mayor says, my friends had a monthly live stream. They started calling me the mayor of the chat, and it just kind of stuck. All right, well, there you go. The mayor. Well, now you're the mayor of this chat. We'll call you the mayor of Alphaville or something. Isn't that a movie, Alphaville? I think I've heard before. Or whatever you want to call this. John says, I actually want to talk to Jim in depth with this in April. For what I know, Continental did not physically change the title. WRS would have to, and the title would probably have been created by Latent Image. Also, we know who actually came up with the Living Dead title. It wasn't Russo. And, okay, so June of 68 is when they purchased it. Okay, that's interesting. Interesting, okay. But yeah, I've always heard that it was Continental, somebody at Continental that came up with the title Night of the Living Dead. That's what I've always heard. Could be wrong. I know, like I said, I know Russo has claimed it in the past, but you can always take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. Robert's saying, I think it's pretty crazy that the zombie genre was created just so they could make some money to do a movie they really wanted to do later. Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, zombies, the whole zombie genre, Night of the Living Dead created the modern zombie, the zombie that we know now. The flesh-eating, dead coming back to life and attacking people and eating the flesh and all that. They kind of started like setting the rules for the modern zombie of what we know as the zombie now. But there were some the white zombies and those type of voodoo type zombies. Like I pointed out a couple streams ago, and Last Man on Earth. They're basically, which the thing about Night of the Living Dead is like what we think of as a zombie really didn't start until Dawn. Really, Night of the Living Dead, they're more people coming back to life and trying to kill, just trying to kill people with, a trowel, a brick, whatever. Like they come back as murderous psychopaths who want to kill people and eat them. But we really didn't get like the zombies in Dawn of the Dead where they're just kind of lost souls, like just, working on instinct, We didn't really get that until Dawn of the Dead. So yeah, some of the rules were being laid there, but Night of the Living Dead was definitely the beginning of that entire genre for sure. Since and fun comparison with Carnival of Souls, 62, both independent, both very low budget, both black and white, both made by industrial commercial filmmakers. I need to see Carnival of Souls. Like, that's one that you guys keep bringing up. I know Bonnie brought it up on one of the last streams. So yeah, that's one I definitely need to check out. It's always been on my radar, but I've never watched it. It's hard for me sometimes to go back and watch older horror films pre Night of the Living Dead for some reason. Psycho, I mean, like stuff like that. Yeah, of course, the old Universal stuff is fine, but even those I'm like not in love with. There's just something about pre late '60s that it just has like this weird, which I mean, Carnival of Souls sounds like something right up my alley, but there's always had something that a lot of films just have this weird like Hollywood feel to it. Like, you get the old school like actors that are like, "Hello, darling, how are you?" "Hello there, dame," that type of shit, which is fine. I mean, it was of the times or whatnot, but it just it's hard for me to kind of get lost in those. But yeah, I definitely need to see Carnival of Souls at some point. I haven't watched anything lately. Like, I've been just busy going, just trying to do this and do that, and I can't remember what the last fucking movie I've watched. Yeah, I thought it was a movie. Don't call it Alphaville at Goddard Movie Sex. Yeah, I thought that was a movie. We'll go with something else. We'll figure something else out. Blake saying, since he was just found and played the one part, any idea or information on when Jesse Del Grey, that played the old priest, died? I always figured in the 80s or early 90s. I'm not sure. I know he was already, kind of an older guy when they shot Dawn. So yeah, 80s, 90s, that sounds about right. But I don't know for sure. That may be a better question for like John, Larry, one of those, and they may know off the top of their heads. But yeah, he was just kind of, I think he was just kind of a local guy. I think he was an actor. Wasn't he a theater? Was he a theater actor? I can't remember. But he's great in Dawn of the Dead. Just a weird performance. Okay, so John's saying I'm correct about the Continental coming up the top. That's what I always thought. That's what I always heard. Which kind of makes sense on kind of my theory. We'll talk about here in a second. Ed Trader Music Entertainment says, to me, this will, the will to live is the strongest thing ever. Yes, we would all die and become zombies, but the fight to live is what stands out. That's true. Like, why, like in a situation like that, when you know there's no winning, you just want to hang on to every day, every hour, every minute possible. Just to continue living life, even in a hellscape of a situation, like, the dead are coming back and feeding on people, and your loved ones are all dying around you and coming back trying to kill you, like that type of stuff. Like, even in a completely hellish world, like, living is still better than dying. And I think that's a really good point there, Ed. I dig that. Watch Carnival on Shudder with Joe Bob, makes it more fun. Okay, so it's on Shudder. I might do that. I like doing that sometimes with Joe Bob stuff, but usually I want to watch it, as on its own first before I watch it with Joe Bob, because sometimes it's I just want to watch something unfiltered, like mentally. I don't want the influence of somebody else's thoughts and opinions, even if it is Joe Bob Briggs. I mean, who's awesome, but yeah, I'll definitely check it out. Saying Carnival of Souls also has some of the same music that Night used, if I'm not mistaken. There you go. Very cool. I'll keep an ear out for that when I watch it. Bonnie saying, "Yep, definitely one to watch." Okay, all right, I'll watch it. Maybe I'll do a review of it on here and give my thoughts on Carnival of Souls. Grande's in the house. Grande's Graveyard. What's going on, man? The alpha of all Romero fans. What's up, buddy? Good to see you, man. I hope you're doing well. And we do a stream here. We need to do a stream here soon, man. And we talked about it recently, but it's been too long. It's been a while. It feels like it's been forever since we've done something. So, but always good to have you in the chat, man. Since Del Grey was a local, mostly homeless guy. Oh, okay. Interesting. Since I don't know about Del Grey, but it probably wouldn't be too hard to find. I think the only thing I know that he did off the top of my head was Dawn. So I mean that kind of makes sense if he was just kind of a local guy that got because he was missing a leg or had that accent or whatever it was, but wouldn't be completely out of the realm of possibilities. Um, So, 1911 Charleston Alphaville Films was also the name of a production company that John Carpenter worked with. Okay, yep. So I will not rip that off. It's been done to death apparently. So I will not start referring to the Chad as Alphaville, which is pretty fucking lame anyway. So don't worry, guys. I won't be doing that. I will not start referring to you guys as the residents of Alphaville. It's just too cringe. Too cringe. Couldn't do it. I agree. Definitely check out Carnival of Souls. Special features on the Criterion Disc are great. That would probably be the ideal way that I'd want to watch it. I'd like to get the Criterion because Criterion, I mean, they just do great work with all the older films and stuff like that. The restoration of it and a lot of the extras and bonus features and stuff for Criterion. Criterion does a great job. And speaking of Criterion, I mean, the Night of the Living Dead Criterion is I was just watching that again the other night in preparation. And there's so much cool shit on there. So if you don't have that, definitely look into checking that out. Granny saying OG Carnival Souls is brilliant. Her Carvey's the man. All right, so it's pretty unanimous. I'll watch it and I'll do a review on here and I'll let you guys know what I think. Yep, human instinct to survive, which is really the most basic human instinct that that we have. Excuse me. Try not to lose my voice tonight. Blake saying Jesse had one of the great lines ever. When the dead walk, senors, we must stop the killing or lose the war. I mean, yeah, that makes total sense. If you're fighting a war against the dead coming back to life and trying to kill you, then stop killing each other would probably be a good place to start. Just from a numbers aspect of nothing else. Grayson, absolutely Alpha. We'll definitely do a stream soon. Got a couple ideas in mind for us in April. Got to run by what? Let me know, man. I will. I'll be there. I'll try to refrain from bringing up adrenochrome and the Illuminati and all of the ties that Texas Chainsaw Massacre has to it. But hey, if you want to get into it, we can get into it. We can talk about whatever you want, man. Alphaberg? I don't know. That just kind of sounds like a Goldberg, like one of those Goldberg impersonators that you'd see at like a local county fair wrestling show. It's like, here comes Alphaberg, the Alpha of Bergs. I don't know what that means. But we'll figure something else out. We'll figure something else out. But whatever it is, you're the mayor. You're the mayor. All right. So, speaking of the Berg, I did make a little visit to Pittsburgh last week. A little trip to Pittsburgh. Left early Saturday morning. Got there a little bit Saturday night. Rained the entire goddamn time. That from the time I left Evansville to the time I got to Pittsburgh, just poured rain, like just rain nonstop. So that kind of sucked. There's a little bit of a damper on it, but got to Pittsburgh. Got to Monroeville, checked into my hotel, stayed at the lovely Red Roof Inn. Like I said, just cheap, quick trip, which is fine. I don't think there were bed bugs in the bed. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think. At least I hope not. Checked in the hotel, and then I met up with Larry out at the Monroeville Mall. We went out to the mall Saturday night, and just we met up there at the loading dock entrance and just strolled around the mall. Did a couple of shot recreations that Larry had been looking at that he hadn't quite done yet. And we're just messing around. We went to the Living Dead Museum, and just kind of hung out, talked. And it was as they were closing the mall, everybody was leaving the mall, and it was kind of empty. And we ended up just hanging out in the mall for a little bit afterwards. And Kevin came and hung out for a little bit and was kind of showing us around the event center that he's putting together, the Time and Space Event Center, which is where apparently a lot of the Living Dead weekend is going to be taking place. A lot of the vendors, a lot of the guests and stuff will be in that one big room, so it won't be as spread out as it usually is, but it'll be all kind of centralized in this one big area. And he'd already been working on ideas and doing some repairs and touch ups on the space and getting it all prepared and ready. And he's got a bunch of different events coming up. If you're in the Pittsburgh area, definitely check him out. There's some pretty cool stuff coming up. There's a screening of Evil Dead 2. It's a night with Rick Catazone, who did the artwork for Creepshow and Creepshow 2 as well. A screening of Evil Dead 2 that's coming up in the event center. There's like a retro media, like I guess it's a convention. It's just a show, you can VHS, Laserdisc, stuff like that. That's what my dad used to call swap meets when he'd go, get car parts and shit like that. He'd go to a swap meet. That's basically what it is. But he got all kinds of stuff coming up leading up to June, to Living Dead weekend, and he was kind of, showing us around, kind of explaining how everything's going to be set up. And I will say the vibe that I got being at the mall, it wasn't a positive vibe. I didn't feel, which I did get there later in the day, so there wasn't a lot of people around, but I did notice more emptied store fronts than I remembered being there in June last year. Which turns out apparently the new owners are already jacking everybody's rent up, and a lot of stores are just saying, fuck it, we're leaving. We're not going to do it, which Kevin said, fuck it. And he said that, they asked him, pay more in rent, and he's like, fine, I'll do it. I don't care. So that's cool. I will say this about Kevin. It was kind of the first time that I had really got to talk to Kevin, even just a little bit, and kind of hang out with him, kind of get a vibe of who he is, and which you get the vibe that he's kind of realistic about the future of the mall and what's going to happen with it when Walmart takes over and what all they're going to do. Not so much pessimistic, I guess, because I did feel, oddly enough, a little bit of optimism from him, just from plans that he had, kind of what he wanted to do going forward. If this happens, we can do this. If this happens, I'm going to do this. Like he seemed like he was pretty slightly optimistic about the future of the mall and kind of, his place in it. So that was kind of a reassuring feeling a little bit. So that's cool. Good to know that he's a little optimistic about it, because I've been pretty down about it. I'm just like, it's fucking over. It's over. But yeah, I don't know where the hell I was getting off on, but yeah, it was cool hanging out with him and really getting to talk to him, meeting him, and and just spend some time in the mall after hours. It was pretty cool. And then me and Larry just kind of hung out in the parking lot after for a couple hours, just smoking cigarettes and talking and shooting shit and telling stories. So that was cool. And then Sunday hung out with Larry, and it was Sunday. We get up, meet, have breakfast, and we're gonna go out and do some different stuff that Larry's working on for a project that I've been sworn to secrecy on, so I'm not gonna say anything. But we're having breakfast, and it's still fucking pissing and pouring, raining cats and dogs, and it's just like, all right, well, Larry's got a couple of umbrellas, like we'll do what we can do, So we get in the car, we're headed out to our first spot, and it starts snowing like a goddamn blizzard, and it didn't stop all day. So by the end of the day, by the time we got back to Pittsburgh, I was going to meet Larry. I was meeting Larry out at Margaret Morrison, where they shot the Crate stuff, the scenes from the Crate. I'd never been there before, so Larry was like, "Hey, let's go," So that was cool. It was cool seeing that. But on the way there, driving through like downtown Pittsburgh with all the hills and everything and the fucking snow, like I was freaking the fuck out. Like it was just like, Jesus Christ, I'm in a rental car. I'm just like, oh God, don't hit this. Nobody hit me, please. It was an adventure. It was a time and a half trying to navigate the snowy, icy streets of Pittsburgh, and you're watching these giant, transit buses going down these hills, going like 2 miles an hour, and you're just like, and you're seeing cars slipping and sliding. I almost got backed into, or rear-ended by this giant pickup truck behind me. At one point, we're down a hill, and I'm sitting there, and I'm looking, and he's trying to stop, and he's just skidding down, and he starts honking at me. So I'm like edging up just a little bit, kind of like, oh, don't hit me type of thing. It was exciting, but it was fun. It was fun, totally worth it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just a country bumpkin from down here in Kentucky. We don't see a lot of snow, so I've had two car accidents in my life, and both were in the snow. One was my fault, one was not. But either way, it just makes it a pain in the ass to get anywhere. So that's why when it snows and grown adults are like, "Yay, snow!" I'm just like, "Do you not have anything to do? Do you have nowhere to go?" Like, some of us I have to go to work. Like, we don't get snow days. I don't know, but but. Yeah, and then that night we had ended up having dinner at Denny's and talking and shooting the shit, and then power goes out because all the snow, and we're just stuck in dark Denny's for a while, so that was fun. And then just came back Sunday morning. Came back. I was gonna try to stay a little later, but I was like, I gotta get the car back at a decent time, and it was a short trip. It was just a little taste of things, but it's totally worth it. It was a lot of fun, and I appreciate Larry for having me out and letting me tag along, and I had a really good time. I really had a good time. And I was thinking like trying to do like some kind of live stream or something last weekend, but just wasn't gonna happen. I was already dealing with enough trying to navigate through rain and snow and sleet and everything else that we were faced with all weekend. Blake said Reggie Bannister, mostly known for Phantasm, has entered hospice with dementia and Parkinson's at age 79. Yeah, I saw that yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Saw that yesterday. I didn't know that he was in such bad. I knew he wasn't in the greatest health. The last I heard, I've never met him, but just from what I had heard, he wasn't in the greatest health. And then yesterday, just kind of seeing a picture of him and hearing he was in hospice, I was like, damn, Reggie Bannister. To me, Reggie to the Phantasm series is what Bruce Campbell is to the Evil Dead series. Like, he's that Ash character, like the Reggie character. He's like one of those characters that as the films progress, he gets more and more badass as they come. So I mean, he's again, horror royalty. I mean, we lost Tony Todd, last year. We just lost Anthony DeLeo. It just it sucks, man. Like all of our horror heroes are getting old, man, and so are we, and it just sucks to fucking listen to. It sucks to fucking see, But I did see that they gave an address that you could mail, fan letters and whatever you wanted to Reggie. They were asking for fans to reach out and mail him, letters and cards and stuff like that. I'll have to see if I can find a link to that at some point, but I'm sure you can find it if you look at Reggie. You can probably look up Reggie Bannister on Facebook or something like that and try to find that original post, which I've seen it posted all over. So if you're on Facebook or any social media and you look up Reggie Bannister, I'm sure it'll pop up. But yeah, really sad and really sucks. He seemed like really cool, down to earth guy. I've never heard a bad story about anybody meeting Reggie Bannister, so that's always a good thing. Larry said it was a fun trip. Cool to hang out with you. Larry says you can talk about what you saw, the footage. Okay, I didn't know if I could bring this up or not, but but I'll share it now that I've got the go ahead. So as I was saying, Saturday night when we get to the mall, we get to Monroeville, and we're hanging out after hours in the mall, and Kevin shows up, and Larry's got, which he's talked about before, Larry's got this footage from the first day of filming on Dawn of the Dead, the very first things that they shot for the movie. So fuck it, we will go into one of Kevin's storefronts, which is the old Hollister, which is where they have some of the screenings and stuff. Living Dead weekend, that's where I saw Night Riders. They did the screening of Night Riders there. So we go in there, we walk in, and of course Kevin's got the projector for the big screen and stuff. So Larry hooks up his computer to the projector, and Kevin pops some popcorn, and we all just sit down. We pull up chairs, We sit down and we watch this footage. It's 30, I think it was like 32 minutes of dailies from the very first day of shooting on Dawn of the Dead. And so not the very first thing they shot. The very first thing they shot, if you guys remember in the apartment scene in Dawn of the Dead, the very first shot that you see before that is I think it's only in maybe the cans cut, but there's a shot of the moon, just this weird shot of the moon. That was the very first thing that was shot. The very first film, like bits of film that were shot for Dawn of the Dead was that moon. The second thing they shot was the original. So there's always been the rumors back and forth. Did they shoot the original sad ending to Dawn of the Dead, or didn't they? If you go back to Document of the Dead, George says clear as day, we shot both endings because I wasn't willing to give up the tragic ending. But then over the years, you've heard, Gornick, and I think I've heard others say, "Oh yeah, we never shot that ending." Or I've heard Gornick say he thinks that they did shoot that ending, but George told him to purposely make it look bad. I don't know. That's always the story that I've heard Gornick say, because George wanted the upbeat ending and not the tragic ending. But I've heard people go back and forth. We did shoot it. We didn't shoot it. We only did a makeup test for Fran's, head, the head that gets shot off with a shotgun. Going back and forth. The very first thing that they shoot, outside other than the moon, is the last shot of Dawn of the Dead. What would have been the final shot of Dawn of the Dead if they had gone with the tragic ending, which is just a shot of the helicopter on top of the mall. You see Fran's body laying at the foot of the helicopter, and you see the zombies approaching, surrounding the body, and starting to tear it apart as the camera zooms back, slowly zooms back as the zombies, engulf Fran's body, and then it's just like this long, slow zoom, which you can see, you can picture the credits starting to roll as that's the last shot of the film, and you see all the hills and stuff, and all around the mall and everything, and I was blown away. I was just trying to picture the end of the movie, what music would be playing, because obviously the gonk wouldn't have been playing for that last shot. I mean, you wouldn't think. I don't think that would have worked, but you start thinking Jesus, what music would they have used? How, because the shot itself is actually really dark and depressing. There's just this body of this character that you've grown to love over the movie, and then all of a sudden the zombies engulf it and take over and start tearing her apart as you zoom out, and that's the last shot of the film. It was pretty crazy. I was pretty speechless after that, but there you go. There's the proof that last shot was that ending was shot. Because really, if you think about it, the rest of the stuff is kind of in the movie. You see Peter sitting there with the gun to his head. You could have just, cut away to a gunshot to that, and then Fran gets out of the helicopter and she's looking, instead of getting back in the helicopter, maybe she looks up to the blades and, dives head first. I don't know. But it's all pretty much there, except for that last final shot. Instead of the helicopter flying off into the sunrise, it's just this slow, depressing zoom back as everybody dies. It's pretty amazing. I don't know if anything will ever happen with that footage, which Larry said that the footage was offered to Second Sight for the Second Sight box set, but for one reason or another, I don't know if it was a rights thing or an issue with Rubenstein, which that was kind of Larry's theories, maybe Rubenstein, because I guess Rubenstein and Second Sight really didn't get along too well when they did the Dawn box set, the Martin box set. So was it something to do with that? I mean, possibly, but they didn't use that footage, which they could have added it to one of the bonus features on Dawn. They chose not to. So I don't know if anything will ever happen to it. I mean, maybe if we all ask nicely and shower Larry with love and gifts, maybe we can set up a little screening or something for everybody that's going to be at Living Dead weekend. I don't know, but we'll see. But yeah, that was the very first thing that was shot in that footage. And then the rest of the footage was a lot of the zombie stuff in the parking lot where they're trying to get in through the, during the voiceover from Richard France, a lot of that stuff in the parking lot when they're trying to get into the car. A lot of that stuff was shot that same day. You can see Jeannie Jeffries was actually a zombie there that very first day, and I think that was before they had actually hired her to do makeup on the film too. I think she was just there as a zombie, and they were just like, "Hey, you." I mean, I'm sure Tom was like, "Oh, hey, come over here. Hey, you wanna help me do some makeup?" And we all know where that led. So, but yeah, just a lot of really, really cool stuff. You see a quick glimpse of George in one of the shots, and of course it was the first day of shooting, November 6, 1977. If anybody ever asked, if you're ever playing trivia, the very first day of shooting of Dawn of the Dead was November 6, 1977. And you see a quick shot of George and the reflections of the glass at the mall, and you see him, and he's completely clean shaven, hair's a little long, but he hasn't grown the beard yet, because by the time you see him, like Document of the Dead, his beard's all grown out, and it looks like he's been through war, which, the making of Dawn of the Dead kind of was for George. I mean, George got really, really kind of, sick after he finished Dawn of the Dead, so it took a lot out of him. But you see this early, like, fresh-faced, first day of shooting for Dawn of the Dead, you see that fresh-faced George. It kind of looks like he did in Martin, as Father Howard. I don't know, it was just really, really cool. I'm really just blown away that I got to see that, and it's just kind of been stuck in my head ever since. I'm just like, God, like, I'd love to see that ending cut in, just for the shits and giggles of saying, like, oh, this is what could have been, that type of thing. But so yeah, that was really cool to watch in the mall after hours. It was a lot of fun. I thank you, Larry, for sharing that with me. I appreciate it. Since saying you can mail me a baggie of bedbug samples to analyze under the microscope on my Micro Addict channel, if I find any, I'll do that. But I don't know. I haven't found any yet, so I think I'm maybe in the clear. Just mail you a baggie of bugs. Rick says there's a hack for checking the hotel bed bugs in the mattress. Take a clean towel and the iron that most hotels have in their rooms. Set the heat to high. And look, I'm not that worried and concerned about. I've slept in so much worse. Like you guys got to remember, I used to play in like shitty indie punk bands. Like I've basically slept on piles of trash. In my time. Like, yeah, I'm a little older now and I like a nice bed to sleep in, but it was not, wasn't above me to sleep on a floor or sleep or sleep in a car or sleep anywhere. Back in the day, like I'd be so drunk I didn't give a shit where the hell I was sleeping. I would just, all right, here's a nice comfy spot under the kitchen table. So I'm not that picky, but I like to check the edges just to see, just to see what the hell I'm sleeping on. Brett saying, so sorry to hear about Reggie Bannister. Love Phantasm, he seems like a great guy. Yeah. Alright, I lost my place here. Since I thought the mall was already pretty empty last year, but it was only my first time. Yeah, well, a lot of like the smaller, like locally owned stores, I think, are kind of getting priced out from what I've seen or from what I observed. Like a lot of the kiosks and stuff in the middle were kind of empty, so that's what I took away from that. And just what Kevin was saying about them raising the rent and stuff is like people were just kind of they're already trying to run everybody out of the mall pretty much and kill them all. This cracks me up. Directly on the mattress itself, pull the covers and the bed sheet off, place the towel down on the mattress and burn it. See, dude, this is too much. Like I'm like, this is something that Will might do. Like Will is super freaked out about hotel beds and bed bugs and shit because he used to work at a hotel, so he's seen some shit, I'm sure. But yeah, like I said, it's just too much. Yeah. No. I'll take my chances. I'll take my chances. Matt saying sounds like there's a plan for us to possibly continue gathering if something happens to the mall. Yeah, I mean that's the thing too about Kevin. That's one of the big vibes I picked up from Kevin. Kevin is a doer. He's got plans. Like he's got a game plan. Like he's Like that's what I was talking about the event center. Like he's a dreamer. Like he's already got this planned out. Like he's out. This is this. We can do this here, and we can do this here, and we can do that. Like he didn't seem too. Which I mean, well, what else can you do except continue, pushing forward. Whatever happens to the mall is going to happen. So why rest on your laurels? But he seemed like a guy that just. He's gonna do it. He's gonna do something somewhere somehow. Like he's got plans and he's gonna bring them to fruition at any cost. It's saying I was stuck at a Denny's in snow once. 9 months later, I had 4 paternity suits. Well, I don't think I will have any issues with that, but well, I don't know. I'll let you guys know in 9 months. I'll see. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. I don't remember anything, but you never know. Yeah, we should have done that, Larry, like a live show or do something. I didn't really have. I brought my laptop, but I didn't really have everything else. But just kind of in the moment, like I'm telling you guys, I'm really fucking bad about just pulling out my phone, doing things, recording shit, getting photos or anything like that. I need a videographer. I need to hire Synth to follow me around when I do shit like this. Maybe one day. Because he covers everything, and I'm just like oblivious. Like, so would have been cool. That's a great comparison. I'm so sad for Reggie. Yeah, I'm serious. Like that's the way that I look at Reggie Bannister and his character in Phantasm is he's like Ash in Evil Dead. Like Evil Dead, the first Evil Dead, Ash is kind of just this stumbling, bumbling, just kind of guy, And in the first Phantasm, Reggie's just the ice cream guy. He kind of figures it out in the end, but he's nothing special. And by the end, he's got like the fucking bullets going around. He's got the shotgun and shit, and you're just like, all right, I'm fucking behind this guy now. It's kind of how Ash became in Evil Dead. He was just kind of an action hero before too long. Brian, what's up, man? Brian Stahl is in the house. Good to see you, Brian. Like I was saying a minute ago, man, I know you're in the Pittsburgh area. I know Kevin's got a lot of events coming up soon. Speaking of Ash and Evil Dead 2 screening with Rick Catazone coming up here. I think it's is it next month? Is it March, I think? And quite a few other things coming up at that event center in the mall. So definitely a reason to go check it out, support Kevin and everything that he's doing, and also go and it's an excuse to visit and hang out at the mall, while we all still can. So, Johnson found Jesse Del Grey seemed to work as some sort of property board member in the Hill District. May have been more homeless during the early latent days. 1915 to 1995. Wow. So there you go. It's interesting. Board member in the Hill District. So there's an extreme there. He was either homeless or he was a board member, a property board member. It's kind of, it's one of those. Matt said he was diagnosed a few years back and had it under control. I guess the situation has progressed, and he collapsed the other day. Tough to hear. Reggie's one of my heroes. Yeah, I knew you probably heard the news as soon as it came out, Matt, but yeah, that's what I heard. Like I said, I knew he had been sick, but then yeah, I guess the other day he had a bad fall. And speaking of a bad fall, I saw this on Facebook earlier today too. David Crawford, of course, Dr. Foster from Dawn of the Dead. Apparently, he fell the other day. According to his Facebook, apparently he fell like on Wednesday and couldn't get up off the floor until today or something like that. And I don't know if Larry, if you've reached out to David to see what's going on, if he's okay, but that's not what we want to hear, man. Like, that's not good. I hope he's okay. Because super, super nice guy, that breaks my heart to hear that he was just kind of stuck on the floor for that long. That's not good. So yeah, man, it's just can we get some good news? Anybody out there? Yeah, Reggie the ice cream truck guy, which is a cool character. The idea of an ice cream truck guy kind of being an action hero in the end. The Romero Experience is a new channel name. I'm not changing the channel name. I'm just sticking with this just because what the hell, but the Romero experience. I don't know. That kind of sounds like a Vince McMahon tag team idea. Like what do they call that one team here recently? The Viking experience or something like that. It's like, hey, and that would be kind of ripping off Cornette because he's got the Jim Cornette experience, and you know, there's the Joe Rogan experience, the Romero experience, the Cornette experience. I think I'll leave all the experiences to the others, and I'll just continue to do whatever I do here. I don't know if this is an experience or an experiment or whatever this is, but we'll keep doing this. Mayor says, I'm not sure if you know or if she ever joined the chat here, but Jamie Hart is in the hospital. She just had a stroke. Yeah, I just saw that too. Again, more bad news, guys. Appreciate it. But yeah, Jamie Hart, I know she's been on Grande's. I've seen her in Grande streams before, the Dead Pit streams and stuff. Yeah, that sucks to hear too. But I did see somebody, I think it was on the Dead Pit Discord. I think somebody, it may have been you, Mayor, kind of said that she was okay and was going to kind of recover from everything. So that's good news too. I guess that's a little bit of good news. You know, she's fine. So. Granny said, that's right, I sat in the Hollister closet while eating pizza watching Knight Riders on an angle. Good times. Yeah, that's where we watched it, on that screen. It was pretty awesome. Yeah, I forget, you were there for that Knight Rider screening too, but we hadn't crossed paths yet. It's probably because you were hiding in a fucking closet eating pizza, so I didn't see your ass. Yeah, I saw it. You got to see it, John. Genuflect or bag, whatever you want to do, but you'd love seeing that shit. Since in the Moon Zoom, or is that another movie? Sucks Getting Older. So it's right after Dr. Foster says they'll be delivered over to specially equipped squads of the National Guard for organized disposition. Or maybe the other cut. But either way, it's that first shot that you see before you see the SWAT guy rappelling down the side of the building. There's just a quick shot of the moon. It's like a half moon. That was the very first thing that they shot for Dawn of the Dead. Yeah. Now, I'm a little bit behind, guys. I'm going to try to catch up here. But yeah, we're just now catching up to everybody's reactions to the Dawn footage. Rick saying that would have been a sucky ending. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, because the last shot was cool, but I mean, it is a real down ending. It is a real tragic ending for sure. But the shot was kind of cool. It was cool seeing that big zoom out, and then all you see more of the mall. You see pretty much all the roof of the mall, all the houses and stuff around the mall. Like it was kind of cool. Just seeing that aspect. I don't know how that would have worked in the final product, which is another, we could do another Romero what if that was the ending to Dawn of the Dead. Would it have mattered? Would it have hurt the film? I don't know. Since then, I heard there were stills of Fran's body. Never saw it though. I've seen the still of like the effects test that they did with the helicopter blades, where you see the body, Fran's dummy body, I guess is what you'd call it. I don't know what the hell you'd call it. Hang on a sec. Shit, I've lost my place. But yeah, I've seen that before, where they're holding the dummy, but I've never actually seen an actual dummy laying on the ground like that, so I never knew that existed. Yeah, Rick and Fran would have still been pregnant. Yeah, I thought about that too. Even making that ending more depressing. Yeah. Johnson, those stills are in the 2004 Ultimate box set. There you go. So there were actual stills. I might have to go back and look at that, because there were actual stills of Fran's body, not just the makeup test, if I remember. Because that's the only one that I think I've seen, unless I'm forgetting. Okay, so here's the address if you guys want to send Reggie Bannister anything. It's Reggie Bannister, P.O. Box 4387, Crestline, California, 92325. Diagnosed with dementia. Yeah, I saw that. So yeah, there you go. If you guys want to send a card, hell, just send fan letters, anything to brighten his day, help him get through the shit that he's got to go through right now. Feel free to. There's the address right there if you guys need it. Walking Dead clearly used that shot for its purposes. Which shot are you talking about? The helicopter shot? Possibly? like I said, I'm a little bit behind. I'm trying to catch up, guys. And then I got something cool. I got a little report from Mr. Matt Landrum to play here in just a second. Then we'll get into the Night of the Flesh Eaters. It's saying so. It's like the final shot of the Crazy is just a single long bleak camera shot. No, not really. I mean, I guess kind of, but it's not an overhead shot like in the Crazies. It's more of just a zoom back, like it's focused in on the helicopter. It's kind of a close up, and then as it zooms back, you see the zombies kind of enter the frame and start surrounding Fran, and it just zooms all the way back until you see everything around it. It's a pretty cool shot. I thought it looked kind of cool. Rickson, did they say how Fran would have died? Did she commit suicide, or was she grabbed by some zombies? She was not paying attention. So in the original screenplay, she stands up her head and sticks her head in the propeller blades, kind of like the helicopter zombie, and that's how she dies. So she would have done that, fallen to the ground, and then the rest, would have been left for the zombies. So. John said, it also shows the helicopter escaping, which shows they had both endings, most likely to cover his ass, so he would choose what ending if they had trouble releasing it. A la Night. Yep, that's true. They shoot. There's a lot of helicopter stuff on that first day. A lot of the shots that they would use for the helicopter's arrival. Like you said, they did shoot that final shot too. So you could tell they were kind of going back and forth on that, even from day one, the very first day of shooting. So. Granny says, so cool, you finally got to see that ending. I'm jealous. I'm still stoked to see the uncut version of Martin whenever that will be. Yeah, I don't know if what's going to happen with that. Suze was actually on, Suze Romero, George's widow, was actually on the Garf network a couple of weeks ago, and I asked her that in the chat. I was like, any plans for that? And she said there's no plans for it anytime soon, and there's, Rubenstein still holds the rights to it. So maybe something will come of it after Rubenstein passes, but as of now, there's no plans to do anything with it except it's going to be in the archive for now. So, since I still sleep in my car in Yosemite, car camping. Hey, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, and sometimes it's better than nothing, man. Jeffrey D. Cristofaro, what's going on, man? I think I got that right on the first try there. Good to see you, man. No worries. You're never late. It's just a party. We're all just hanging out here. You can just show up when you want. Just make sure you BYOB. Live streams are easy. I don't know. They're not to me. Like I'm always like, oh my God. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I have fucking mic troubles and connection issues and shit all the time, and I'm just like, oh my God, I gotta make sure all my bases are covered. Everything's good to go. I'm anal, and I stress about every little thing that I do, and it drives me crazy. So I like to have a plan in place, But a lot of the times when I do, just kind of throw it on, just kind of come on here, where there's some breaking news, or if I'm just whatever, like it all works out. So I'm just crazy. Jeffrey saying, rest in peace, Reggie. Apparently the original screenplay Don was supposed to use and on a down note like Night, both Fran and Peter committing suicide. That's true. Jeffrey saying, I think Phantasm had a deleted scene where the tall man was vulnerable to cold, like the Blob. That kind of makes sense with the ice cream truck thing in that one scene where the tall man's walking down Main Street there, and he stops by the ice cream truck that's open, and he's just kind of taking it in. So, which is one of my favorite scenes in Phantasm. See, Grind saying, Jamie's so kind, I literally couldn't finish her video. It made me so sad. I'm happy she's doing well now. Yeah. I can't remember where I saw that, but I did see that she was recovering and doing better. So that's a positive. Larry says, Andy, I shared a post to you about the Fran dummy test photos on Facebook. There you go. Granny saying, I wasn't hiding Larry's tour ended slightly late and the movie already started. I just sat where I could sit read it. Well, you made it sound like you're just creeping in the closet like Jay Leno. The old story of Jay Leno hiding in the closet, spying on the NBC execs. John says, I was lucky enough to see it. It has been burned in my head. Okay, I was curious. I didn't know if you'd seen it or not, but that's cool. I'm glad you got to see it. Mayor says, will there be a grande pizza cut of Knight Riders for the 4K box set? A grande pizza cut. Is that a typo or a joke? I don't. A grande pizza cut of Knight Riders. For the four. Are you talking about the scene where they're eating pizza? One of the most disgusting, vile scenes that Romero ever put on film, where they're sitting in the back of the van eating the pizza. Like that just fucking cheese on the tits. I don't know. It's just it's not a combination that I like. Cheese and tits. No thanks. But I don't know. A Knight Riders 4K, I mean, would be fantastic to get at some point. But I haven't heard anything, so I don't know if we're gonna get any cut of Knight Riders on 4K anytime soon. Jeffrey said also the original script for Dawn and had Fran and Peter committing suicide, but while working on the script, Romero must have had a change of heart because he changed it to more of an ambiguous. I've read a couple of different stories about this. I've heard that Romero wanted to change it to a happier ending, just because I've heard him say like, oh, we kind of fall in love with these characters, and we don't want to kill them all. But then I've also heard that the Italians kind of requested that George do a happy ending because Star Wars had just come out overseas and was a huge success, so they kind of wanted to leave it on a more happy ending, I guess, than everybody dying in the end. I've heard a couple of different takes on that, but I think the fact that they shot both from day one kind of tells you George had kind of had that in mind from the very beginning. So all right. I got a super chat.
You never know. Money, money, money.
There you go, my man. Zombie Historian, $10 super chat. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Let's see Peter and Roger loot that bank. Hell yes, sir. Thank you so much. I would really appreciate that. You don't have to do that, man. But that's awesome. I appreciate it. You gotta love looting the bank, though. You gotta love seeing them loot that bank. I got a T-shirt. I should wear that. Maybe it'll inspire more super chats. I don't know, but a T-shirt of just that image there, the photo image of those two. And of course, I wore it first year I went to Living Dead weekend. I always talk about, you hang out, you meet people that speak the same language as you, and just in an elevator at the hotel, a guy just looked at my shirt and was like, "Money, money, money," and I was like, "Hey, you never know, you just start, you come up with fucking conversations like that with just random people." It's pretty awesome. But thank you so much, sir. I appreciate that. Zombie Historian, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. Where was I in the chat here? I'm trying to catch up. And then I got something pretty cool to play here for you guys. I think I was... Aaron Brasmer, I think, is where I left off. What's up, man? Good to see you in the house. I think it's a new name. Be wary of Walmart's plan for the mall or property. Back in my hometown of Rock Island, Illinois, Walmart swore to the town that if they tore down the building that at one time housed Zayers, they would build a Walmart in the spot. Once it was torn down, Walmart pulled out, leaving an empty field. Pray that doesn't happen to the mall. That's interesting. Walmart could do that. I mean, they make enough money. It's like, hey, why? But there is no Walmart in Monroeville, so I think they've been trying to get into Monroeville for quite some time. So they're gonna build a Walmart, whether they tear down the entire mall to do, because it's a lot of land out there. You don't need all of that land for a Walmart. I don't know. I think there's bigger plans in place for that entire area than just building a Walmart. I think there's going to be more to it. Whether that includes the mall or not, we shall see. But Oh, okay. So here's what I'd pay to see/hear a grande commentary of Knight Riders while he's eating pizza. Maybe that's, hey, dude, maybe that's the stream. Maybe we should do a Knight Riders commentary while eating pizza. Why not? Until that one scene comes up, and then I won't want to eat any more pizza. Since we've come full circle talking about dummies to a Fran dummy. Yeah, a lot of dummies. One of the unsung hero of Dawn of the Dead, maybe the biggest star of Dawn of the Dead, is Boris the Dummy. I mean, he does everything. They put him through all kinds of. They blew him up, set him on fire, tossed him off balconies, ran him over with trucks. I mean, they were almost as bad to Boris the Dummy as they were to poor Tasso and Tom. Man, they were throwing. Poor Tom had to be wouldn't he like riding around in a golf cart at one point because he couldn't walk around the mall because he jumped off the balcony and hit both of his the backs of his the heels of his feet, I guess, on the fucking floor of the mall. Crazy fuckers. John says there's stills of the head being blown up and being filmed, but it just appears the test of how it would look. Okay, I've definitely seen that photo of them holding the dummy outside of the helicopter. But I think that's all I've seen of whatever's out there. Jefferson, Night Riders is so underrated, yet it was overlong, but it deserved more appreciation at the time of its release. Ill-fated, given it also came up against John Borman's Excalibur. Yeah, that was kind of the big thing that, Excalibur is more of a recognizable thing than Knight Riders, and people were just like, what is that? Ryan says, I love that movie. It was a great watch that night. I didn't meet Alpha until the next day. We met in a sports store. It was so cool. It was like the dawn of his channel. Yeah, I mean, it was very, very early from doing anything. I think I just discovered your channel, Grande, like maybe a week before that, because I had just popped up, and I think you were talking about your trip coming to Pittsburgh for Living Dead weekend, and I found you, and I remember specifically watching one of your live streams in the hotel room while I was there that weekend, and you were talking. I think you were in your hotel room talking about it. So I think we just we communicated a little bit back and forth then, and then I found you scoping for I think you were looking for some Steelers shit. I think if you're a Steelers fan, you'd probably been looking for some Steelers stuff. But I think you were going to a baseball game, so I think it was confusing. You had a Mets jersey on too, so yeah, you had a lot going on there. Looking for Steelers stuff while wearing Mets stuff, and yeah, good times. Rick said that would have been a very horrific ending if Fran dies when the main character is killed and it becomes the last scene, the ending of the movie. It makes the audience very self-aware. Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of happy with the happier ending, the more upbeat ending for sure. Blake said, imagine if Fran did kill herself and Peter didn't. It would have ended with him screaming when he got to the rooftop. Yeah, he'd been like, shit, why did this have to happen? That would be a different ending. That would be a completely different ending. Like, well, what if Fran kills herself and Peter's like, I changed my mind. Oh, shit. I waited too long. Yeah, pizza seems pretty gross. Like, ugh. Larry says, I found an alternate cut of Knight Riders with lots of differences, but that's a story for another day or a whole video in itself. Interesting. Okay. I know they shot a lot for Knight Riders, so I'm sure there's a lot of different takes and different footage out there for it. That's interesting. John says, Larry was at the same one in the Romero archives. Do they have one in the archives? I don't know. I gotta get back to the archives. So much more. There's so much more to see in there than what I saw. I only dug on like the very tip of the iceberg from Don and Martin. So, Larry says, John, I have not seen what is in the archives. I've heard it was a longer version. I found a shorter 2-hour version. Okay, interesting. I'll have to hear more about that at some point, Larry. John said, I remember on one of the Garf YouTube videos during COVID, one of the archivists showed a few deleted scenes. I vaguely remember that too, actually, now that you bring that up. They should make it a nature preserve or a zoo instead of a Walmart. That would be weird. That'd be a better use of the property, I guess, but It'd be kind of weird that a zoo is now, oh, this is where we shut down the dead. And there's a monkey flinging shit. It's like, yeah, okay. Interesting. What will happen to all the items in the museum and the mall? I assume they will either go back to the people that own them, because some of them are on like loan from different collectors and stuff. But like I said, I feel like even if the museum's not in the mall, I think there will be a museum somewhere, because Kevin's just that determined type of guy. Like this shit's going to exist somewhere, become hell or high water, because it's gone back and forth a number of times. Like it started at the mall years ago, the museum. And then it moved, they got kicked out of the mall, had to move to Evans City. So the museum was there in Evans City for a while. And then they came back to the mall, and now it's at the mall. So it'll be somewhere, I'm pretty sure. As long as Kevin still wants to do it, I think it'll happen somewhere. Cut down an international version of Knight Riders? That would make sense. That would make a ton of sense. Especially an international cut like that. Blake says if Fran killed herself and Peter didn't, he would have been on the roof swinging an empty rifle like Fess Parker as Davy Crockett at the end of the Alamo. Yeah, pretty much. The Alamo would have been lost at that point for them, I think. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna put a pin in the comments right now. I'm about caught up. But I want to get to something here real quick, while we have a chance to. Before we get into the main topic of the show, we're already almost an hour and a half into this sucker, and we barely touched on it. But that's what happens. I get into you guys' comments, and then time flies by. So, but this past weekend, friend of the channel, good friend of mine, great Matt Landrum, visited the Days of the Dead convention down in Atlanta. They had another Days of the Dead convention down in Atlanta. A number of really cool guests. Like, it was a really, really cool lineup down there this year. But he went, I think he went Friday. Was it just Friday, Matt, or were you there Saturday too? I think it may have been just Friday. But anyway, he sent me a video update on his experiences and his time at the Days of the Dead in Atlanta. Some pretty cool stories, some pretty cool stuff. And there's a very special cameo appearance at the very end of this video, so stay tuned for that. So here it is, a special report, live, or not live, but recorded from Atlanta, Georgia, from the Days of the Dead, Atlanta, from Mr. Matt Landrum. So here you go.
Hey dude, it's Matt. Hope all's going well. So tonight was Days of the Dead in Atlanta, the horror convention. Lots of cool guests were here tonight. Lots of cool vendors. Was able to pick up some cool stuff. Got to meet the poster zombie from Zombie, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name because I'll fucking butcher it. But super cool guy, super gracious, very humble, very Italian gentleman. Didn't speak much English, but he was very kind. Got to speak with him and his handler for a few minutes, and I guess they kind of translated what was going on, and that was a lot of fun. So, got to meet Tom Savini for the third or fourth time. He was Tom Savini, so there was that. But one of the highlights for me was meeting Norman England, who happened to be there with his wife, who was a guest, and that was pretty incredible. That was a really cool moment for me. I'm sure you, like many other people like us, spent a lot of our time, childhood, teenage years, visiting his website, The Zombie Farm. I spent countless hours learning about him, learning about Dawn of the Dead, learning about George through his website. So getting to meet him and getting to explain that to him and, tell him how much I appreciated what he did, was pretty incredible. So that was a lot of fun. But the biggest highlight for me tonight was this next guest that I'm going to talk to you about, who has been around for a long time. He's worked on, stuff with George. He's kind of made a name for himself now, pretty big name, and such a super nice guy, super gracious and kind. We had a great conversation talking about George, talking about some of his films, but of course the conversation turned to you and your channel. So I'm going to kind of segue into something else here in just a minute, but Speaking with this guest, he kind of let me know, I guess, sort of how he stumbled onto your channel. He was watching the Savini and I guess Chris Stavrakis commentary for the European cut of Dawn of the Dead, and he talked about how much he enjoyed that and how much he could hear the phones ringing in the background and people talking in the background and chatting and stuff like that, and it said it just really kind of opened his heart back up, and he sort of felt like he was with George again, and with those people again, and kind of in that moment. And he talked about how much he really loved that, and then it segued into some of your stuff, which is how he kind of stumbled into your live chat the other night. So anyway, I spoke with him. We had a good talk. He was a great guest. Like I said, very kind, very gracious. But he had something that he wanted to tell you. So I'm gonna switch over to that. But keep up what you're doing. Love the channel. Love everything you got going on. And I'll see you soon.
Hey, it's Greg Nicotero. You are, or if you're not, should be watching Alpha Romero on YouTube.
How fucking cool is that? Greg Nicotero, ladies and gentlemen, of all people, fan of the channel. How cool is that? So cool for Matt to do that. He didn't have to send that, but so cool. That I was blown away when I saw it. I was like, holy shit. But yeah, if you guys missed it last stream, Greg Nicotero was in the chat, and we didn't believe it until he texted Larry. Larry was like, "Oh, text me," and Greg texted him, was like, "Yep, I'm here." I'm like, "Holy shit!" So, Greg, if you're watching, thanks for that, man. That made my fucking year. That's so cool. Thank you so much, man, and thank you, Matt. Matt, and it's funny. Matt's like the coolest dude. Like, if you're not friends with Matt Landrum, be friends with Matt Landrum. Just the nicest, most genuine dude in the world. For the fact that he would think of me enough to go out of his way to do something like that was pretty special. Was pretty cool. But yeah, so pretty damn cool. And it's cool. I mean, he told me the story. He met Savini again and had another Savini experience. So, but that was cool. Thank you for that, Matt. I appreciated that. So now I got to catch up on wherever the hell I was on the chat here in a second ago. But yeah, you guys better fucking believe I'm gonna use that Nicotero thing every week. Anytime that I'm just like bumming or slowing, and I'm like, the streaming, I'm just gonna play the fucking Nicotero thing. It's like, all right, I'm cool again. All right, I feel cool again. All right. But yeah, it was cool that he met the fucking zombie from Zombie. I don't think I've ever really seen him like at a convention or anything before. Maybe he has in the past, but not that I can remember. Not a lot. Yeah, definitely not often. So that was pretty cool. That Matt got to meet him as well. But yeah, Norman England. Let's talk about Norman England for a second, because I got this in the other day too. Friend of the channel, another guy that everybody should be a friend with because he's one of the coolest guys in the fucking world. Paul Farver. Actually met Norman England. We talked about Norman and the zombie farm and stuff a couple of weeks ago. The website, the zombie farm that Norman did back in the day. That's kind of how we all kind of, that's a lot of us learned a lot from that website and kind of really fell in love with George and his films through that website. But Paul actually met Norman at a convention in Chicago, which I think is the same one that Grande was at. A couple of months ago, and he picked this up from Norman. This is something that Norman recorded back in 1986. Very, very early. One of the probably the earliest I can recall anybody doing this. Traveling and visiting the Monroeville Mall, and Norman had apparently taken a tape recorder and kind of stashed it away, and just walked around the mall and just recorded the ambiance of the mall. And all these years later, from 1986 to now, he finally released it on a CD Paul got the actual CD and he's burned it. I think he sent it out to Matt as well. I think he's got one, but it's called Discreet Mall by Norman England, and it's literally just an entire CD full of the ambiance of the mall in 1986. So you're hearing like people shopping, you're hearing the mall music fucking pop me. Like, I'm listening to this shit because I was listening to it the other night. I mean, it's just mall ambiance from the Monroeville Mall in 1986. It's really, really interesting because you think of shopping malls in the 80s, and you think of like how they're portrayed like in modern stuff like Stranger Things, and you think like, oh, 86, you're walking through the mall and it's just playing like this 80s like dance music and all you think it, but no, like the Monroeville Mall in 86 still sounded almost exactly like the mall music was pretty fucking spot on to the music that they used in the actual film. It's really cool, and actually I did actually pull one of the tracks to play for you guys to kind of give you a sample of what it was and what the Monroeville Mall sounded like all the way back in 1986. So listen to some of this. I won't play the whole thing, but I'll just give you guys a little taste, a little sample. And listen to this mall music. Listen to this music and tell me if it's not like just fucking perfect. Like that's what you want to hear when you're like, oh, the Monroeville Mall back in the day. Like I wonder what that sounded like. But here it is. Check it out. It's the Monroeville Mall, 1986. That's what it sounded like. And I think at one point you can hear Norman like ordering a pretzel or something. And it's weird. At one point you can hear the fountains. So you kind of, because you're taken to where the big fountains were in the mall at the time, so you can kind of picture it. I don't know. This is super nerdy shit. I don't care. So people are like, what is this? What is this? But I love it. And I'm not going to get a copyright strike for any of this, I don't think. So that's a plus, too. So I can play this whole damn thing if I want. I can play the whole CD on here for you guys if I wanted to. But no, it's just cool. It's like cool ambient music to just play in the background. Like I was listening to it the other night while working on some stuff for the channel. And just kind of takes you there. Takes you there just for a day, as CK says. But I just love that music, that mall music. It's all okay. That's all I'll play for you guys. Just a little sample. It's called Norman England Discreet Mall. I don't know where you can find it. I think you could probably track him down on Facebook and maybe message him for a copy. I don't know what he's selling them for. Or I mean, honestly, if you guys want, I'll burn you a copy and send it to you. Just shoot me an email. It's just a really cool little thing to own. Which the actual artwork that Norman has on the CD is actually photos of his time in '86 at the mall, and the mall was pretty much exactly how it was. I think the ice rink was gone, the ice palace was gone at that point, but it still looked pretty much exactly the same way it did when they shot the film. But anyway, what do you guys think? I get back to your comments here in just a second. Fucking figure out where the hell I left off. You guys are burning it up tonight. I appreciate it. You guys are kicking ass. Okay, so Grant is in. Yes, sir. I was looking for Steelers stuff. Talked briefly with Richard Francis about New York. He liked my Mets jersey. Yeah, Francis from New York. Did some theater in New York. Really cool guy. I wish I could have got to speak with him longer. There you go. You had a good experience with Amplis. I remember you talking about before. Where Amplis just shot the shit for like 30 minutes and he signed some shit for free and was just happy to talk to you, which is the kind of guy that Amplis is. If you get a chance to meet Amplis at a convention, which he'll be at Living Dead Weekend this year, he's one of those guests that loves the films and is as big of a fan of the film as you are, and he loves talking about it. So, and those are the best guests to meet. Larry said I could talked about this like 3 years ago, but I don't know how to deal with the geo blocking. I don't know how to deal with the geo blocking either. Matt says I've got an appointment to get into the archives the Thursday before Living Dead weekend. Can't wait. That's awesome, man. I'm glad you're getting to do that. Are you going to are you reading the original Dawn treatment from the early 70s? Because if you read that, I want to talk to you about that after that, because it's really interesting. It's something completely fucking different. Talking about some technical stuff. Brian says, can't imagine not having a museum in town. The local love is still there, man. Yeah. Like I said, it'll be somewhere. As long as Kevin wants to continue doing it, it'll be somewhere. Whether it has to go back to Evans City, or I would love if there was a way, because I don't really even know what's in that building now, but 247 Fort Pitt Boulevard, I would love if somebody bought that building out and just turned it into a Romero museum, maybe in conjunction with the archives or something. I don't know, but that would be so. Can you imagine that? That would be so fucking cool. Because you got the basement from Night of the Living Dead down there. You got the rooftop in Dawn of the Dead. I mean, just so much took place in that building. I mean, that itself should be. I mean, we talk about the mall and all that being, how it should be a historical place and all that. But 247 Fort Pitt Boulevard really should. I mean, that's kind of, especially for local Pittsburgh and the film industry that has, grown over the years in Pittsburgh. Like 247 is kind of an important place. It's an important place in their lives. That would be my dream if I ever got rich one day, is do something like that, maybe. Jefferson, couldn't they just construct a museum dedicated entirely to the film history of the area there, with an expanded exhibit dedicated entirely? They could do that too, yeah. Which they have stuff like that at the Heinz Museum. I know there's some exhibits and stuff in there for George and Knight and stuff like that. So, which the Heinz Museum, I think they're the ones, aren't they the ones that own the bridge? They got the bridge from Dawn of the Dead, which is just probably in a warehouse somewhere. Nobody doing anything with it. Yeah, Grande met Norman. I met him in Chicago. He was with Takako Fuji. He translated for me. Yeah. He travels with her. He's kind of her handler. So anywhere she goes, Norman will be there. So that, if you guys are interested in meeting Norman in England, look for her if she's going to be showing up at any more conventions. Because if she's there, he's going to be there too. Granny said, I didn't know how much he loved George until Alpha told me the next day or so. Yeah, I thought, I can't remember when Paul told me that he was going to be, it may have been the day of. And I was like, oh, I know Grande's going to be there. I should have told you just so you could have brought it up and just been like, hey, guess what? I know who you are. Let's talk about Dawn of the Dead. It's the best thing. Talking about Dawn of the Dead. Brian says, oh my god, I forgot about the zombie farm. It's some memories, man. Yeah. Everybody loves the zombie farm. Blake says, great place for Dawn of the Dead Museum would be the mines where Day of the Dead, yeah, remains constant in the 50-degree Fahrenheit range, just open. Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea, but I still think they're using that. I keep hearing, because you hear Elon Musk, and they always they're talking about these mines in Pennsylvania where they send all this government documentation and stuff. And that's the first thing. I forget who brought it up in one of the comments. That was like one of the immediate first things. Maybe Johnny, I think, that was asking about that. First things popped into my head was like, oh, are they talking about the Wampum mines? But it's something similar to that. Yeah, Greg's super, super cool. Greg's a guy, it's like, there's no reason for him to have to do anything, or, but he's a fan, first and foremost. Like, the dude's gone on to make bukus of money and is just maybe the most, like, successful effects artist, in the history of film. I don't know, but just the fact that he's still just such a cool fucking down-to-earth fan that just is just a fan like us is so fucking cool. Matt says, my apologies, by the way. I think Greg may have actually been referring to the Cans commentary with George. Yeah. Yeah, I can retire now. Nah, I still like doing this. So as long as I like doing this, I'll keep doing it. It was fun talking to Greg in the chat. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, he was just in here. We were doing the 10 questions with Ed Trader Music and Entertainment, and Greg was giving his 10 too. So it's like, oh, I'm basically interviewing Greg too. I mean, he's giving me his 10 questions, or his 10 answers, I guess. Matt doing some retractions, or as Sal Gouvernail says, traction. Either that or the UK DVD release with Tom and Chris Stavrakis, also Norman Reps, Takako Fuji. They're not married. His wife was there, though. Yeah. There you go. There's some retractions. There's some clarifications there. It's all good. It's all good. We run without an editor around here. I do that all the time. Like, I'll do a stream, then I'll go back and, like, listen to it to work on some clips or something, and I go back and I'm like, oh, what the... Why did I say that? That's wrong. Why did I... Because, like, I think I was talking about Lynn Lowry at one point. I said she was in I Spit on Your Grave, but I meant I Drink Your Blood. But listening back to it, it's just like, oh, Jesus, I fucked that up. Like I said, I'm weird. Let's see. Grind is saying Landrum's a great person. Couldn't agree more. Happy to call him a friend. There you go. Vindication there. It's saying Greg would be on the one where I couldn't get the internet to work over my man cave. Thanks for the vid. Yeah. Well, we've already talked about it, Ed. We're going to get you back on soon to do the full tour of the collection, and we get once you get the internet situation figured out there in your cabin of collectibles. So we'll get you back on, man. We'll do the full thing. But it was cool seeing what you had, what you could grab last second, and just bring over to the other location. But yeah, we'll definitely correct that. And Jeffrey says, Greg is another legend I'd love to meet. I've already met John Russo and Tom Savini, and it would be great to meet another who helped bring George's visions to life. Yeah, Greg was the first guy I've ever met at a convention. And it wasn't even like at a table or anything. It was just as we were walking into the convention. It was my first convention, 2008, 19 years old. Walking in, Greg Nicotero steps out of a car at the entrance of the hotel and is walking in next to us. And I was just like, oh my God, it's Greg Nicotero. And he's like, hey, you here for the convention? Just, small talk. But it was just like, for my brain, it was just like, oh my God, like these people actually exist. I never knew. Bonnie Santa is really cool. It is. Matt says, got one of those from Paul too. My son and I sat and listened to the whole thing the other night. Incredible. There you go. It is crazy how 86 Monroeville Mall really kind of just sounds like what you would think 70s Monroeville Mall would sound like. Steven, what's going on, man? Steven Ustrack Jr. is hanging out tonight. That was so awesome. Glad he has a sense of humor. Good dude. Hell yeah. I got you, Larry. I got you. I'll hook you up, my man. Zombie Farmer's a wacky video game, sadly. Yeah, I think I've seen those before. TCCK Gaming. Speaking of gaming, video games. What's going on, man? Good to see you. Hello, all. Synth, I got you, man. Like I said, guys, shoot me an email or just let me know if you got my number or we're friends on Facebook. Or however, just shoot me a message and let me know. Shoot with your address. I'll burn you a copy and send it out to you because it's just a cool little artifact to have. And like I said, it's just awesome fucking background music, just ambiance to surround yourself with. Bonnie loving it. Jefferson definitely the 70s sound, that Monroeville Mall music. Hell yeah. John says, oh, the chord progression was a slower version of Super Mario's star theme. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. That's cool. Yeah, that'd be a great idea. So I need to do an ambisonic recording of Monroeville ambiance before the mall's gone. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll take a copy of that too. Brian liking it. Yeah, so I mean it's cool, guys. If you want a copy, like I'll get a bunch of fucking blank CDs. I'll burn a bunch of copies and I'll send them out to you guys. Because I don't even think Norman's selling them. I think he's just kind of, if you see him, he'll hook you up with one. Because I mean, I don't know, but it's a cool piece of history to own, I guess, just to have. What I said, it reminds me of when I worked at Sears in high school and never minded the music. Yeah, I went to visit my childhood mall in Madisonville, Kentucky yesterday because it's been years since I've been out there. I mean, I grew up in that mall pretty much, and I mean, man, it, it's in bad shape. I'll just say that it's not long for this world, as they say. It was kind of sad. Mayor says there a track called "Attention Shoppers." It would be cool to go along with the mall music. I don't know if there is, but you can definitely hear some like intercom announcements and shit at times. Like you can hear people talking as they're shopping, and kids. It just takes you there. Just just takes you there with the sound of it. I guess just close your eyes and relax and just picture the mall, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, it does. Sounds kind of like the same music they used in the 2004 Dawn of the Dead. I could see that. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Matt saying, yes, I'm pulling the OG Dawn treatment along with a million fucking other things. Can't wait to get my hands on the Dead Walk newspaper prop. There you go. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to talk about that, the Dawn treatment, what Dawn was originally supposed to be. It's interesting. We'll say that. I'd love to get your take on it, see what you think of it. Michael Rashpaul says, I know the cemetery is still here, but what became of the farmland from Night of the Living Dead? I think Larry's answering that here. The owner of 2474 Pitt is a lawyer and has his office on the 5th floor where George has his offices. His father owned it since the way back when George... Okay. Well, I mean, he's not going to be there forever. So, I'm just saying. But, Michael, your question, the farmland's still there. The land is still there from Night of the Living Dead. The house has been torn down, but you can still go out there. There's a house that's there now that's replaced the old farmhouse, but the land and stuff's still out there. I mean, Larry just did a tour video with Sean Clark on the Horrors Hallowed Grounds where they were out there just a couple of years ago. So check that out on Sean Clark's channel. Ken Goldsmith, the name of the guy that owns 247. I'll keep that in mind. Love the Sal Governale traction bit. Oh my god, I started a whole conversation on Sal Governale on just some off fucking comment. Just as Sal Governale walked into the music store I worked at in December for our Christmas party, he's friends with the owner, was not expecting to see him. That's interesting. He didn't whip out his dick and start slapping it on things, did he? He didn't start playing the drums with his dick or anything, did he? He didn't offer to play karaoke, did he? I haven't listened to the Stern Show in years, so I don't know. But I'm just back in my time, late 2000s, early 2010s. Nothing better than that. That to me was the best era of Stern for sure. And some of those phony phone calls and the Tradio shit. I mean, my God. Anyway, Michael says, if you had to choose, would you visit the farmhouse Night of the Living Dead or the Monroeville Mall, as it was in the movie mall? Yeah, I mean, I just to go back to that mall and that time period. Yeah, that's an easy. There's nowhere else I would want to like. Even if you could like travel back in time to see the birth of Christ or something, I'd be like, nah, I'll just go back to '77. I just want to walk around the mall for a little bit. That's just me. Since that's how I met Stan Winston before he died in a hotel lobby. There you go. That's pretty cool. Stan Winston's a hell of a. He was kind of the first effects guy that I remember hearing about when I was a kid. Was Stan, because I got Terminator and Aliens and shit like that. So that was kind of the first like big effects name that I remembered. That I always knew when I was a kid. I turned 51 today. Really missed the ambient music from malls and shopping centers. Yeah, they were playing something yesterday at the mall, cause like the mall in Madisonville, but it wasn't fun music like that. TCCK says malls are dying because of Amazon. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big part of it. People just shop online now. That's a huge part of it. But also just think like, I don't know, man. Like I see happening malls. It's just the malls that are, taken care of. It's the malls that continue to work to offer people something to come to because people need shit to do on dates, right? I mean, there's got to be something. I don't know. You can't just sit at home and shop on Amazon, but I guess people do that now. They don't go out to movies. They just, Netflix and chill or whatever it is, So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that's a big fucking part of it, but I think that's just part of it's just how it goes. Technology. Since there was a cool app on the App Store called Radio Appori, where folks uploaded ambient sound segments from areas around the world linked on a map. That's really cool. Uploaded one from Stanford Mall. Yeah, I'd do that for Monroeville Mall for sure before it's too late. I think that'd be awesome. Blake saying shopping areas are dying from a brain disease. People act like animals in there nowadays, and normal people don't want to bother. That's a big part of it too. Yeah. Sal played "What's in My Pouch" at the party. No, Sal's nice. I didn't get a chance to talk because I was teaching guitar. That's hilarious. "What's in My Pouch"? Jesus, classic stuff. And Michael says the first 5 years of Stern's serious run, 2006-2011, was legendary, and this coming from a guy who listened since 2001. Yeah. That to me, that's the best. The early serious years. That's my era right there. The arty era, as a lot of people call it. Since I used to be a super effects nerd, learning how to do them, knowing all the markers well, and scouring Cinefex, Fangoria, and so many other mags. I thought about that, like when I was younger, like did I want to go to film school or what? I really wanted to go to Savini school, more than anything. So I thought that'd be fucking cool, but I have no artistic talent whatsoever, so it is what it is. Ended up going to audio engineering school, which you couldn't tell by all the issues and shit I have on my streams, but it is what it is. But yes, Larry is asking, what if? What if? So what if? Let's get to our main event tonight, the main topic. We're already almost 2 hours into this, but you guys are killing the chat. It's been fun. A lot to talk about. It's been 2 weeks since I did the last one, but I think we're a little caught up here. And to the main event, the main topic of the night. What if, in 1968, George A. Romero released Night of the Flesh Eaters to an unknowing audience of what to expect? I don't know how to intro that, but that's the big what if tonight. What if, instead of being renamed and rebranded as Night of the Living Dead, they kept the original shooting title, Night of the Flesh Eaters. And let's say it did have the copyright. Whether it did or didn't, John, let's say it did have the copyright. And then they copyright Night of the Flesh Eaters. It goes out October 1st. What happens then? Because we all know that Night of the Living Dead would be retitled from Night of the Flesh Eaters to Night of the Living Dead. And in the process of changing the title card at the beginning of the film, they remove the copyright, which the Copyright Act from like 1906 or whatever the hell it was, stated that every film needed to have the physical actual copyright on the actual film itself, which that didn't change until mid 70s, I think by 75, 76, if I remember correctly. That kind of expired and went away, and that now that's no longer the case. Like, you don't need a physical copyright on a film to, rightfully own it. But at this time, you did. They removed the original title card, which removed the copyright, which once Night of the Living Dead was released, it was released into the public domain, where it has remained for all of these years. And everybody and their mama has released it and screened it and shown it and done this and done that and done pretty much any and everything they've wanted to do with that film. Colorized it, remade it, done tons of different versions of it. I mean, Night of the Living Dead 3D, Night of the Living Dead reanimated, and it's gone on to become a bigger thing than anybody ever originally thought. And this is an opinion, this is a debate that has gone back and forth from Night of the Living Dead fans, from Romero fans for years, is if that copyright, did the lack of a copyright hurt or help the success of Night of the Living Dead? I think there's two answers to that, in my opinion. There's two answers to that. The first answer is yes, it helped the film by not having the copyright, which is kind of what I subscribe to. The fact that there was no copyright on the film and put it into public domain pretty much freed it up to be screened, shown, displayed, whatever, anywhere around the world for free. Theaters could screen it. Distribution companies could distribute it on VHS, DVD, Laserdisc, whatever. Free to just to release as many different releases as possible. They could colorize it. TV channels. I mean, it's cheap programming. I mean, that's, you know, it was everywhere. And I think that has helped it become what it has become all these years later. It really is one of those movies. It's like Hulk Hogan. You know, it's like maybe not everybody could pick him out of a lineup, but everybody's heard the name Hulk Hogan. Like, not everybody has seen Night of the Living Dead, but most people have heard the title Night of the Living Dead. They've heard of it. They know of it. I know it like Living Dead weekend every year, like when you meet people that are just there shopping or whatever, and then they're like, what's going on here? I've had this happen a number of times. Like, oh, what's going on here? And it's like, oh, it's, you know, it's a festival for a zombie movie that was filmed here years ago. And you're like, oh, are you talking about Night of the Living Dead? And you're just like, no, it's the sequel, but sure. So they're like, oh, Night of the Living Dead. All right, Night of the Living Dead. Everybody knows Night of the Living Dead. They don't really necessarily know Dawn of the Dead, the actual film that was made in the mall, you know, that they're standing in the town that they grew up in. They just, you know, but they know Night of the Living Dead. And I think that's due to the fact that there was no copyright. It was in the public domain. It was shown on every TV channel. It was shown in every theater. I think there was, I remember hearing back in the day, there was always the myth or the story that somewhere in the world, Night of the Living Dead is playing on a theater screen. Somewhere. Every night, doesn't matter. Every night of the week, somewhere in the world, Night of the Living Dead is playing on it. And that's probably true. I mean, it probably is playing somewhere. It's being shown somewhere. Now, I know that that's a big sticking point because a lot of money was lost. I think one of the last figures that I heard for Night of the Living Dead was $30 million about is what it made worldwide on its theatrical run initially. Or maybe that's over a period of time. I can't remember. But it made a ton of money. And it's a ton of money that none of the people involved ever saw. George never saw the money for it. John Russo never saw the money for it. Russ Streiner never saw the money for it. Carl Hardman never saw it. They didn't see a dime from it because it didn't have that copyright. They didn't legally own the rights to that film. So the money that was made from that film, they got none of it. And still to this day, which a lot of that is being, you know, kind of rectified by Jim Cirinello and the work that he's doing with Image 10. And all that right now. So that's a huge plus. And we can talk about that if you guys want to talk about that. But because I have my thoughts on that as well. And I'm not, you know, I'm an open book. So whatever you guys want to talk about. But for all these years, you know, 50 some odd years later, this film still remains, technically it's still in public domain to this day. I actually just watched a YouTuber the other day talking about, you know, playing it on his channel and looking into it and seeing, oh, yeah, it's still in public domain. So there's a little gray area there, I think. But I do think that has helped that film become what it has become. Now, the other train of thought is that, you know, taking it from the aspect of George and the rest of the people that made the film, it did not, that it hurt them. It's one of the biggest, which Russ Streiner still talks about. It's one of the biggest sticking points in his life, in his career, is losing that copyright and losing out on all the money that movie made over the years. Which I definitely see too, and I definitely think that there's truth in that. But I think it comes down to a matter of making a big profit up, like, right at the beginning. Like, yeah, maybe it would have made that same, if Night of the Flesh Eaters was released, would it have made $30 million? That's a big question. Because again, like we talked about at the beginning, I think the title, Night of the Living Dead, was far more marketable, far more palatable for a mainstream audience, for the theater-going audience. The title, Night of the Living Dead, is far more, it's a better title to me. Like, Night of the Flesh Eaters sounds like an exploitation film that they'd play at midnight screenings and drive-ins and shit like that. It's got grindhousey type of title, which is what they were going for. If you listen to any interviews with George or John, they always talk about it as like, we wanted to make the most marketable type of movie possible. So, because they tried to do like Wine of the Fawn beforehand, which is, like a Bergman type film, which they weren't going to be able to do, and if they did, they really wouldn't have been able to sell and make any money with. So the whole idea, the original idea of making Night of the Living Dead was, let's just make something that's easy to sell, that can make a little bit of money, and can maybe help finance a different type of movie after the fact. Like, maybe it can help finance something like Wine of the Fawn, so we can make that, make something more artsy and blah, blah, blah. And I think the fact that these guys had it in them, and the urge to make that type of movie, kind of made Night of the Living Dead as good of a film as it is, and all that it has to say, and all that it is doing in terms of... look, George, John, all those guys are really, really smart guys. That they had a ton of time, especially back in the day. Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, going against the world, like living, the hippie life, the Knight Rider's life, fighting the fucking dragon. Like, that's what the latent image guys were doing. So stepping out and making a feature film in Pittsburgh was a huge risk, but these guys had the balls and the gumption to do it. And thank God that they had the balls and the gumption to do it. But you can definitely tell that there was a brain behind the film. Like, it wasn't just a horror film, a scary monster movie, or which Dwayne Jones always used to say in interviews. He's like, "Oh, it's that silly monster movie I made back in the day." I don't agree with that at all. I don't see that at all. I think it's a really smart film. So even if they were going for an exploitation, matinee afternoon horror movie, which, they tried to push the limits with the gore a little bit, maybe make it a little bit more marketable, just to have that shock value, So I don't know what the fuck I was talking about, but I'm just kind of going off on a rambling tangent here, but yeah, like I think I was talking about the title, Night of the Flesh Eaters, how it's more exploitive and all that. It just kind of sounds like a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie or something. Like, it just sounds like something that not everybody's going to want to see. But if you go to the theater and you're like, "Oh, honey, let's go see a movie tonight. What's playing down the road?" And it's like, "Oh, there's this, horror movie called Night of the Living Dead." And it's like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." The Living Dead, like the play on words there. I think the title itself is more interesting and a better title than Night of the Flesh Eaters or Night of Anubis. I think a Night of Anubis would just be like, "Oh, what the fuck does that mean?" Like, nobody knows what that means. But something like Living Dead, it does play to our, like we were talking about earlier, our basic instincts of staying alive, and our basic fear of death. And it's like, what is that, So, I think it is a better title, and I think it helped the film in that way. So do I think Night of the Flesh Eaters would have made as much money as Night of the Living Dead? I think it would have made some money. I think there was definitely an audience for a movie like that. I think when people saw the movie, it might spread with word of mouth and be like, "Oh, this is actually a good film. You should see it. It's not just some schlocky, movie that, you watch and forget, there's something there." But I also think the fact that it was in public domain, and was kind of open for everybody to see it from all backgrounds and all tastes, and it's just one of those movies that's always playing somewhere, so it's always in front of new eyes. I think the fact that was the case kind of helped it too, because it opened the door for all types of different people to see the film, and eventually it's going to catch the interest of the intellectual types, which it did over in France after it was released. The French kind of picked up on it and was like, "Oh wow, there's more to this. It's saying something, there's meat on the bone here, no pun intended." And I think the fact that it was public domain, I think that helped it too. It helped get it in front of different eyes that could expand on, because George even talks about like all the social commentary and all that. Like, he really didn't look at it that way when they were filming it. Like the idea of casting a black guy in the lead, casting Dwayne Jones as Ben instead of Rudy Ritchie, as they originally were planning on doing. Didn't, like, I think he was like, yeah, we thought about it. It was like, who cares? Like, black, white, who cares? He was the best guy for the role. Like, Dwayne Jones was the best choice for that role. Black, white, purple, blue, it didn't fucking matter. He wasn't casting because he was black. He was casting because he was the best actor. And George didn't think anything of that. And then when the movie comes out and people start seeing that, and they start kind of taking that and spinning it, and then all of a sudden they're seeing more in the film than I think George or anybody else really actually meant there to be. And like I said, I think the fact that it was in public domain and was just playing everywhere kind of helped more people see it than would have, because you got to think, like, a lot of the intellectual types, if they see a film, Night of the Flesh Eaters, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds schlocky, I'm not going to watch that. But Night of the Living Dead, it's like, even if you're not interested in seeing it, at some point you're going to turn on TV and it's going to be playing, you know. Hell, I think the first time I saw Night of the Living Dead was in Halloween 2. I think we talked about that with John. Like, I think it was the first time I ever saw Night of the Living Dead. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was, you know, young and watching Halloween 2 from Michael Myers. And there was this movie playing on the TV, and they used that because it was public domain. So it was the first time I became aware of, like, oh, what is this movie? Like, oh, okay, that's cool. And I think I read somewhere that Night of the Living Dead was the most, like, in other movies, it has been played in other movies more than any other movie in history. So there's that. So yeah, I don't know. I think if it had been copywritten, if, like, let's say Richard Rubenstein, somebody like Richard Rubenstein had the rights to Night of the Living Dead from the beginning, it probably would have made a nice little chunk of money at the beginning, but I don't think it would have had the long-lasting impact on the culture and horror genre in general. God, there's so many different routes to go. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling here a little bit, but so the term flesh eater, would we have gotten zombie from that? People would have just seen the Night of the Flesh Eater and just called them flesh eaters. And I'm sorry, but I can't picture a world where we're all traveling to Flesh Eater Weekend in Pittsburgh, or you know, George makes Dawn of the Flesh Eaters. It just doesn't fit, you know. So I think the title itself, I mean, would the zombie genre have been created the way that we all know now if it had gone in specifically telling you, like, okay, this is what these are, they're flesh eaters, instead of living dead, which living dead could be zombies, vampires, whatever. Us, you know, they call them ghouls in the film, but they would just become zombies over time because it just what it became. But I think if it was, like, specifically in the title labeled these creatures as flesh eaters, you know, I don't know. I don't know if we would have gotten the zombie genre as we would have all known it. But the other big thing, and I did have a theory on why the copyright was lost that I'll share in just a second. I have a few notes here. There's the impact on so many different people that were involved with the film. Let me try to catch up on some of you guys' comments. What do you guys think? I've just been kind of rolling here for the last 15-20 minutes, so I may be completely out of line or off the beaten path, but yeah, Synth forgot we had a topic. Yeah, topic tonight. John said, now, as Ben Stern said, no more bullshit. Howard. I have a Ben Stern fucking impression. I won't do it though, but your mother, I like to eat my blueberries. Anyway, to me, Night of the Flesh Eaters would have been a bigger mistake than Black Sabbath keeping their previous names Earth or the Polka Tulloch Blues Band. Yeah, I would say especially the last one, probably not the best one. But Earth, I always thought was kind of a cool name. Like, but yeah, Black Sabbath, you can't beat Black. That may be the best band name in the history of band names. Black Sabbath. I mean, Jesus. Blake says, from what I understand, night is what caused current grading system from GX, removing X and unrated, making NC-17 was a big step. Yeah, that's part of my theory. I'll go ahead and just, since you're bringing it up, and I could be wrong on the timeline here. I mean, when John kind of brought it up a little earlier, but so my theory is Continental removed the copyright because the film came out on October 1st, 1968. The MPAA rating system didn't go into effect until November 1st, 1968, a month before that came out. I feel like, and this is just a theory, I feel like Continental rushed the process of changing the title to try to get the film out before the MPAA came into being. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm off platform on that, I don't know, but just reading about it, doing the research about the MPAA system, like maybe Continental knew that film would have gotten an X because of, the gore and the violence and all that, and they wanted to get it out under the deadline before the MPAA took over and started rating films and stuff. So maybe in the process of doing that, they were just in a hurry and just flubbed it. And they were just like, oh, shit, let's get it out October 1st. We got to get it out before November 1st. Maybe that happened. I don't know. That's kind of my theory on it, that they were just trying to rush it out before it had to be rated. But could be wrong on that. But that's just something I took away. Just kind of the takeaway that I was reading into it. But yeah, there's no way, especially in 68, that if there was a rating system before Night came out, that film would have been an X easily, and that would have killed it more than anything. That would have killed the success more than anything if it would have gotten an X rating, which is why George fought so hard with Dawn of the Dead not to give it an X rating and just said, fuck it, we'll release it unrated, which is almost as bad as an X because it's telling people that, you don't know what to expect because there's no rating on this, which, but yeah, that's a good point. And that played I think the rating system and the idea that it went into effect November 1st kind of played a big role in it, but that's just my theory. I don't know if anybody wants to challenge that and let me hear it, but Michael says, Night of the Living Dead going public domain made Romero a household name and made theaters millions of dollars. I feel if the film had kept its original title, it wouldn't have had that impact as it has today. Yeah, and the effect on Romero's career, too, that's another big aspect, the career. And what would happen to the latent image going forward, and what would happen with the careers of John Russo and Russ Streiner. I think even if they had kept the title Night of the Flesh Eaters, and it went on to make, let's say, half of what Night would make theatrically, $15 million, that's still a huge profit for the film itself. I mean, it was $114,000 was the budget for Night of the Living Dead. That would have been a huge, it would have been copywritten, and they would have had control of it. They would have made a nice, good chunk of change there, and they could have invested that into their next film. I don't think their next film would have been There's Always Vanilla if they would have had that type of money for their next project. It may have been something like A Wine of the Fawn or Expostulations or something like that, more of an artsy type of film. I don't know, but the fact that they didn't make the money off of Night of the Living Dead and kind of led them to There's Always Vanilla, because they felt like it was another thing that was easy to sell because those type of romantic comedies or whatever you want to call them at the time were kind of popular. So that's kind of why they did it. There's Always Vanilla with the same spirit, but you also got to think like Night of the Living Dead. Another big thing about it is it was really a community-made film. Like, yes, George was the director and is credited as the director and was the editor and screenwriter, and it's mostly George's vision, I think. My opinion. It's mostly George's vision. But before George was slated to direct, it was originally Carl Hardman's going to be the director. And then Carl Hardman didn't want to do it, so it was like John Russo will be the director, and then John Russo didn't want to do it, so it just kind of like Romero didn't want to direct the film. He was just like, yeah. Then eventually they were like, no, you're the most qualified. You can kind of do a little bit of everything, and thank God for that, because I think that's a big reason why Night of the Living Dead is as good as it is because it had somebody like George, which early George directed to edit. His directing style, he would visualize how he wanted to edit the scene together. Like, he could kind of picture it in his head, picture it in his brain, It's like, okay, I want this to cut to this, and then this to cut to this. So that's how he directed. He was like, okay, we're going to shoot it this way, then we're going to shoot it from this angle because I want to cut here to cut here. And you see that in The Crazies, you see it in Dawn, like all the stuff that George edited. So I think that's why Night of the Living Dead works on a lot of levels, is the editing and the directors, in tune with the editing and everything, because it's the same guy. But I mean, it was a community effort. I mean, it was Carl Hardman, it was John Russo, it was Russ Streiner. I mean, it was a movie made by committee in a lot of ways. As was There's Always Vanilla. Now, it worked on Night of the Living Dead because everybody was kind of full steam ahead, everybody on the same page, like gung-ho, everybody, But by the time Vanilla rolled around, and I don't know if it's due to the lack of financial reward that they missed out on from Night of the Living Dead, or what it was. And I do know George, after Night was done, George kind of was like, yeah, I want to direct. Like, I want more control. I don't want to do, like, George was kind of moving away from the idea of like, oh, let's all direct or what. He wanted more control as Night went on. And then by the time they got to Vanilla, they were all kind of starting to split off into different directions. And George wanted more control over the production. Rudy Ritchie was the screenwriter, and everybody was just kind of pulling in different directions, and that's why Vanilla really didn't work. Although I love the film, it's one of my favorites. It wasn't successful, and it's just one of those that you either like it or you don't. And that's why they all kind of split off after that. But so if Night of the Flesh Eaters had come out and they had the copyright and they did make a pretty good profit and they could make something more, I honestly think they would probably they would have split off earlier than Vanilla. I think Russo would have gone his own way and started doing his own thing. I think George would have gone his own way and started doing his own thing. Maybe still even under the same umbrella as the Latent Image, as like a group of filmmakers, but they, instead of all working together on one, they would have a little extra scratch to kind of do their own things. Maybe that would have happened. Maybe that would have been interesting to see, because George is the first film of George's where he had pretty much total control over the screenplay. The whole production was Season of the Witch. So we may have gotten something like Season of the Witch earlier. But I mean, Season of the Witch was not that far after Vanilla. So I mean, they kind of ended up where they were going to end up anyway. But I think they would have ended up there a little quicker. Had they had the copyright on Night, but Bonnie says, I think it would have taken longer to make an impact with the copyright. I do too. If any impact at all, Okay, so copyright law changed officially as of January 1st, 1978. Films have automatic copyright now. Before that date, they had to have the notice on them. There you go. January 1st, 78. Steve, what's going on, man? Steve Mars in the house. Greetings, Alpha and Flick friends. What's going on, my man? Good to see you. Glad to have you in here as we're battling on about Night of the Living Dead, Night of the Flesh Eaters, Night of Anubis, whatever the hell you want to call it. That's a good point too, Bonnie. What came after may not have happened. Would George have done Dawn of the Dead if Night of the Flesh Eaters had come out instead of Night of the Living Dead? That's a big one. Would there have been the urge? Because I feel like George would have gone in a different direction, period. Like when I say they split off from each other, I think George would have gone on to try to make some more non-horror stuff. I think he would eventually return to horror because he was a fan of the genre and he liked, you could tell. I mean, he had his outlook on the world, like his point of view. I mean, he was not the most like glass half full type of guy a lot of the times. A lot of times he'd just look and say like, yeah, the world, it's like, what's the George Carlin line? It's like, something is fucked up. You ever just look around and say, something is fucked up? Like, I feel like that was George. George was looking around and say, something is fucked up around here. Like, I love that about him. But yeah, I don't know, man. Do we get Dawn of the Dead? Do we get the rest of the films after Night of the Living Dead? If Night of the Flesh Eaters was the big success. Let's see, John Villa says Knight was making money in the beginning, but it brought a suit against Continental because they were not paying Image 10 as much as they should. By the time they went to court, Continental went bankrupt. Yeah, Continental went bankrupt, 75? It was like the mid-70s, I think. I know the Walter Reed organization was out of business at that time. I think they had gotten to like theaters, or they had bought a bunch of theaters and stuff, mostly through the early 70s. Rick saying, I think the only silver lining from Night of the Living Dead copyright mishap is that it gave them exposure to a wider audience. Yeah, and I think it has given them, instead of just like I said, all the success up front, it's kind of spread that success and that opportunity to all of those guys all these years later, even down to the fact that they still can show up to conventions and sign autographs and make money doing that way. Like, they're still making films. I mean, John Russo's still working to this day. And a lot of that's on the back of from the guy that made Night of the Living Dead. Everybody knows Night of the Living Dead, so this guy must be some hot shit. Let's see what he's done. And then they pop it in at Santa Claus, and you're like, what the fuck is this? I like Santa Claus in a weird way, but yeah, I think it's given them something recognizable to kind of build their careers on. And it's kind of like the saying, is lead a horse to water and they can drink, or what? No, it's what the fuck am I talking about? Give a man a fish and he can eat for a day, but teach him how to fish and he can eat. That whole saying, whatever the hell that is, I don't know. Anyway, I'll get out of sayings. Larry says, it's my theory that the black and white version of Martin has no copyright, and it was produced before January 1st, 1978. Essentially, it's a Night of the Living Dead situation, a film with no copyright. Ooh, Ruby would sue anyone trying to release it, though. That's really interesting. I just now put that together with you saying that. That is interesting. That is a really good point. I don't think you would have a case, though. I mean, if it came out pre-78 without a copyright, I mean, shit. John says, also, I think the public domain status only pertains to old crappy 35mm prints. I don't think the story script title is public domain. Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure how that works now. Because I know that they've gotten some of that back, some control of that back, but I also know that there's like, I've heard from people that it still is public domain. Like, you can still do whatever you want with it. But I think that there's something with the Criterion version when Night of the Living Dead, when Criterion did that night release, kind of restored some of the copyright. I'll have to go back and look into that farther. I'm sure you know better than I do, but like I said, I'm just trying to recall how that's all working now in current day. Jeffrey says, I saw the 30th anniversary VHS of Night of the Living Dead from 1998 that was made in an attempt to fix copyright problems, and it's like, yeah, well, that's another thing too. The Night remake that Tom Savini did was done with pretty much the sole purpose of trying to fix the copyright issues with Night of the Living Dead, so they can kind of own the name again. And they did it with the 30th anniversary VHS, and they've tried it a couple of different ways to try to recoup some of that, but. So yeah, I mean, if it was Night of the Flesh Eaters, we would have never had the remake of Night of the Living Dead. And I mean, I don't know, maybe Savini would have done Night of the Flesh Eaters one day, but you never know. But I mean, I guess the good part, we wouldn't have got the 30th anniversary version of Night of the Flesh Eaters. I don't think there would have been a big push for that at that time. So. Rick says, I agree. The title would have not the impact of the name was for Flesh Eaters. Yeah, I like Living Dead better. Synth says they clearly wanted money first, but the infamy was a nice byproduct, at least in lieu of the copyright issue. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The infamy was a nice byproduct in lieu of the copyright issue. I agree. John says, I don't think the title really matters. Living Dead is a way better title, but the movie would hold up, and word of mouth reviews would have quelled any issues and title not being good. Yeah, see, I don't know. I can't say that with any certainty. Because, like, I'm sorry, but, like, Night of the Flesh Eaters is just not... It doesn't have... the same... I don't know, the same aura as like a Living Dead, but maybe it's just because we've all grown up with Night of the Living Dead since we were born, so it's just kind of ingrained in us. But I just can't picture a world where a film with a title like that would be something as embraced as a title like Night of the Living Dead. I don't know. Like I said, this is all just conjecture and bullshit on our parts, but that's the whole point of the show, the whole point of the topic. Since it's using Flesh Eater would have made it sound like some sort of wild cannibal movie, not horror title, not as good for sure. I agree with that too. Yeah, I think it would have, like I said, I think it would have completely defeated the whole zombie aspect, where eventually that's what zombies would become. They'd just be known as flesh eaters, which I just don't see that lasting forever, and creating a whole new genre, the flesh eater genre, who's heard of that? Blake says, about 10 years ago, my local theater offered free Night of the Living Dead tickets. You had to go get them. It was a great screening. Yeah, I've that's the thing. I've seen Night of the Living Dead more so than any other Romero film on the big screen, just for that reason, that people can just play it, and it's without any consequences. Which, that's the thing too. I think the fact that Night of the Living Dead is a good film. A lot of films that ended up in the public domain back in the day were free, but they sucked. Like, they were shitty films. Like, they were movies that were not good. I don't know how many other ways to play that, but just bad shit. And Night of the Living Dead was actually a good film. So it was like one of those rare moments where you pick up, the cheap VHS at the grocery store and you see Night of the Living Dead, or most of the time you pick up those, or you pop it in. Like, just when I was a kid, you'd pop in those cheap tapes from the public domain stuff, or you'd get those like DVDs back in the day that would have like 50 movies on them or something like that, and it would just be a bunch of crap. And then Night of the Living Dead, they were all just public domain shit that people were just putting out, making money off for nothing. And Night of the Living Dead is actually a good film. So I think the fact that it stands out, it's just like, holy shit, this movie's everywhere and it's good. Like, I think that, there's no doubt that it being good helped it. Rick saying, however, the success as a late night cult classic on TV for Night of the Living Dead due to the exposure versus making the royalties for airing it on TV is bittersweet. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Would the royalties have been there all these years if the copyright was there? That's the back and forth thing with the whole goddamn conversation. So, Steven says, in my opinion, between the title or copyright debate, the copyright hurt much more financially. However, the exposure of being as widely available as it is helped them long term. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think that's pretty spot on. John says, Night of Anubis works better because it doesn't give the movie away like Flesh Eater or Living Dead does. It was created because they knew that no one would use that title before. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I just don't think, but I think that's a worse title because nobody knows what Anubis is. Like, that's, but is it any better or worse than, that'd be a poll. I'll just do a poll at some point. What was the best alternate title for Night of the Living Dead? Night of Anubis or Night of the Flesh Eaters? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's bringing in the crowds as something like Flesh Eater or Living Dead does, Steven says, other than It's a Wonderful Life, I don't recall any movie on more during the 1980s. That's true. Hell, still, like, I remember first time I saw Night of the Living Dead, I think the first time I saw it was on IFC. The original Night of the Living Dead was on IFC. But the first time that I recorded it was on A&E. It was on A&E at like 2 o'clock in the morning, like, for no reason. It was just like programming, free programming we could put on when everybody's asleep. But I stayed up and fucking recorded that shit. But yeah, it's everywhere on every channel. It's in every movie. It's pop culture. It's just part of pop culture. The name itself is synonymous with film at this point. Night of the Living Dead. I think the first time I ever heard the name, and this just popped into my head, the first time I ever heard the name Night of the Living Dead was in Look Who's Talking with Kirstie Alley and John Travolta. When she says, I look like I could look like I could have the lead role in Night of the Living Dead. She looked like shit, so I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know, what's that about? I remember watching that as a kid, Big Look Who's Talking fan. Rick says, we have to remember when Night of the Living Dead was released in theaters October 1st, 1968. It was the 60s Vietnam. 60s Vietnam was in full swing. That's true, too. Steven says, the title wouldn't have been as big of a deal as long as the story is basically the same. Yeah, like I said, I mean, I think people would see it. I think it would have been successful either way. I think it would have made money either way, but I think the title did help it. The title, along with it being public domain, kind of helped it become what it became and kind of inspired everything after that because everybody could fucking see it. I mean, I guarantee you go to any physical media store near you, there's a copy of Night of the Living Dead somewhere in there. VHS, DVD. I mean, there's a whole book on it of like all the different releases of Night of the Living Dead from over the years. An entire book. It's pretty crazy. And again, if there was a copyright, I don't think we would have had all those releases. We would have had some releases, and they would have gotten some nice paydays from those when VHS came around and DVD and stuff. But so yeah, I guess it does just kind of, you know, the doors that it opened versus the financial gain, which was more important. It's all personal belief. Blake says Night of the Flesh Eaters would have sounded more like a skin flick, especially when it would only have played on 42nd Street Trash Cinemas. There you go. That's true. It does sound kind of... Which there was a movie, which is why they had to change it, because there was a movie before that called The Flesh Eaters, I think, is what the title of the movie was called. And it didn't have anything to do with zombies or ghouls or anything like that. I think it was about a flesh-eating disease or something like that. But that's why they had to change it, because there was a film from like 62, I think 1962 was when The Flesh Eaters came out. John says, I wish I knew when it was discovered. There was no copyright on it, but I'm pretty sure it was after the French discovered it. That's interesting. Yeah, I've never really heard like when the first person was like, hey, there's no copyright on this. Yeah, I'd love to learn more about that. Diary of the Flesh Eaters. Yeah, there you go. Land of the Flesh Eaters. It's saying Funny Girl, Lion in the Winter, Nobody's Perfect, Blackbeard's Ghost, etc. All of these are copyrighted movies from 1968 that were hugely successful back then, and hardly anyone knows these films. That's true. That is very true. Night of the Living Dead could have been, or Night of the Flesh Eaters could have been like that too. But I think of the fact that it's a genre film, like a horror film, exploitation film, I think there would be, there'd be releases of it, still to this day. Like if Night of the Flesh Eaters was a thing, like it would still be getting like a Severin release, a 4K release from Vinegar, which would kind of be fucking cool. But I don't know. But yes, that's very true. I was actually looking at the Walter Reed. There's a document that listed all of their planned releases for the year of 1968. And yeah, you hadn't heard of any of them. I think the only other one that I remembered off the top of my head is Faces, John Cassavetes' Faces, which is one of my favorite movies. That was a Walter Reed release in '68 too. So yeah, it was pretty interesting to see just the which is why my theory of like, how could they have missed, losing the copyright? Like that's something that they should know. It's not like it's their first rodeo, John says, as for no one noticing the copyright, I heard George say that Continental assumed it was at the end, and Romero assumed that Continental would change it. Again, that's dubious. Yeah, there was a mix-up somewhere along the way. Because, I mean, they knew enough from the start to put the copyright on from the very beginning. So it's something you would think somebody would have had to notice at some point, but Blake says, we made up the term zombies in the first three movies. Zombies only said once. Peter said, with those bay doors open, there's going to be 1,000 zombies in here. Yeah, that is the only time that you hear the word zombie in Romero's films. John says, but ultimately it was Layton's responsibility. Again, Continental didn't actually change the title. Layton did, and their work print of Anubis has no copyright either. Interesting. Rick said, I heard that one of the original titles for Night of the Living Dead was Zombies That Ate Pittsburgh. I don't think that's true. Never heard that. There wasn't a different ending for Night of the Living Dead. The original ending for Night of the Living Dead that they wanted to do first would have Barbara survive. She wouldn't have been dragged out into the people, into the zombies and torn apart into the people. She would actually have gone down to the basement with Ben. Ben would have come up and gotten shot like in a movie, but then they come down. They see Barbara shaken, terrified in the basement, and just as they're about to shoot her, they notice that a tear is coming out down her cheek, and that's how they realize that she's actually human. Which would have been a real interesting. And we're talking about an interesting alternate ending to Dawn of the Dead earlier, but that would have been. I don't know how that would have gone over. So. Larry says, John Villo, I have a theory that no one has ever said. The film needs the copyright on it, but it also needs to be filed with the Copyright Office. Paperwork and a copy of the film have to be provided. Let me see, there's a part 2 to that. Even if they forgot to add the mark on the film, the paperwork was never filed. I think if the paperwork was filed, they would have had the legs to stand on to claim copyright, but no mark or paperwork. That's an interesting theory too. It just seems like such a basic, stupid fucking omission for a company to not notice. And it just seems like such a simple thing to do. It's it has to be on the film. There seems to be you would think there would have to be some more paperwork and more shit going on behind the scenes to make all that official, more so than just the fucking thing on the actual film itself. Okay, John saying, Alpha, we have the documents that list Night of the Living Dead as early as late June, so it wasn't that. Okay, so my theory, like I said, this is just a theory I concocted doing some research on it. And I noticed Night came out in October 1st, 68. The rating system didn't go into effect until November 1st. And then I remember reading, I think it was American Art Institute or something like that. Wherever I remember reading that it was first announced by Variety and a couple other mags at the time. It's September of '68 is when Continental announced that they were releasing Night of the Living Dead. So it seemed like a rush job to me just with those 3 dates. But yeah, that's interesting that they'd had it already all the way back as early as June. So there's that. Let's see, John has a theory too. Larry, that's more like it. Simply they forgot. I think the reason why is because they probably got into the habit of never copyrighting anything because it was for other companies. That's a good point too, with the fact that I think guys at Latent Image really never had to worry about copyrights because most of the shit that they did was commercials, industrial films, and stuff that belonged to other companies, so they didn't have a copyright on it. So that's a good point too. Robert likes my theory. Very good theory, personally. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think it just comes down to that. Larry's got it. Makes sense. They fucked up. Yeah. But again, it's one of those mistakes that filmmakers, artists that there's a reason that George needed a Richard Rubinstein. There's a reason that you need that hard-nosed, business-minded guy to kind of make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, But, it's one of those little mistakes that cost him a lot of money. But again, it could have been worse. It could have been that the movie sucked but made a lot of money and they saw none of it, and then they never went anywhere after that because the movie was so bad. I don't know. But it kind of worked out, so. But yes, they fucked up, for sure. Since the worst thing about releasing it unrated as the advertising rules for that label is the limited print coverage and no TV radio. Yeah. Pretty much releasing it unrated is just as bad as releasing it as an X-rated film. It's telling people they couldn't even rate this movie. It's so bad. There's no rating for this movie. That's what most people assumed when they saw it. And of course, when you see an X, you just assume this is porn. So pick your poison, I guess. John said, I would love to see any copyright on any original Latent material prior to Night. Unfortunately, virtually none exists. Expostulations, whine, all never finish. That's true. That is a really good point. Down is up. What's up, man? What is up? All late to the party, but I'm here. Well, we're still here hanging out, man. It's getting a little late. Took us a little bit to get to the main topic tonight, but we're getting into it now, and it's pretty interesting. It's like, what if, Night of the Living Dead didn't exist as it has for all of these years? John says, also, I was told in the court that the court said if Continental changed the title and they messed up, show us the work print with the copyright and we'll reinstate it. The one that was destroyed in the flood. Interesting. So, you think that one was destroyed in the flood? Yeah, I guess it would have been. Because they surely would have dug that up by now, somewhere. Since says George was the coverage king, always have many options for editing. Yeah, that's a big thing too. George always called it covering, cover your ass style. But that was just George the editor directing the film because he knew how he was going to edit it and what it was going to look like. And he wanted to give himself as many different options as possible. So, I mean, that's which is unfortunate. Like the more, it's funny because the more money that you have, the less of that you can do. It's like the bigger budgets that George got as the 80s and the 90s rolled on. The bigger his budgets got, the less coverage he could get. It's like, because it costs so much money and takes so much manpower and work just to light a fucking shot. Whereas like back in the day, he could just be like, hey, Mike, get over here. Can we get a shot of this bird? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, man. And they just shoot the bird and move on. It's like, it turns out, it didn't turn out, whatever. Like, it'll be. But then when you're working with millions and millions of dollars, it's like, oh, well, we got to make sure everything's on the schedule and all that, which is the big thing about Hollywood directors. Like, Hollywood's just looking for directors who can keep on schedule and keep under budget. Stay on schedule, stay under budget. If you can do that, you'll continue to work in Hollywood one way or the other, if your movie makes any money at all. And I don't think George was that type of director who just wanted to stay on time, stay on money. I mean, most of the bigger budget stuff that he did went over budget with the studios because he wanted to do so much more with those movies than he was actually able to. Just because it cost so much and took so much time to get everything he wanted to get. So, that's why he loves Martin. He's always talking about Martin's probably his favorite film of his that he ever did, was because he got everything. Because they literally had the ability to just get every shot. Just say, hey, Mike, get a shot of this. Okay, all right. He had that ability to get every fucking thing he wanted, which is why the first cut of that movie was like 4 hours long or whatever. But yeah, just I love talking about George the editor. That George mastered anything. It was his editing. Losing that in the flood. John says, well, it took almost 50 years and they found the Anubis as, guess what? No copyright. In fact, I was told that some people tried to forge one on it and got caught. Oh, wow. Well, there you go. So maybe it never had a copyright on it at all. Unless they had because even before Continental purchased the rights to distribute it, it had a title card on it. And the original title was Night of the Flesh Eaters on the original title card, wasn't it? Because they always talk about they threw it in the trunk of the car and drove to New York to see if anybody would want to buy it, type of thing. So they had it cut there that I'm pretty sure had titles and everything, unless they waited and didn't actually add the title animations and stuff until after it was sold. Maybe I'm not sure. Interesting. It's insane. Yeah, revisionist history by them to cover up the embarrassment. John says in short, they fucked up. They were sloppy. They had no idea the movie would blow up as it did, and when it did, they got screwed. I don't know if they don't want to admit it or their memory is clouded. It's probably a little bit of both. A mistake that size, it's probably a little bit of both. A little bit of denial and a little bit of, it was 50-something years ago. So it's probably a little bit of both there, for sure. John said, it's water on the bridge now. It's copywritten. Well, the only copy people want to see. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I do think that's how it works. For the restored version that Criterion put out, which is the best looking version to get. I think that's the one that's under a copyright, but if you want to use the old, shittier 35 millimeter prints, you can do that. I think that's public domain. So I guess that's how that works. Interesting. John says, I don't think the copyright would change the George trajectory. He got money real quick after Night and wanted Vanilla, which bombed. If anything, it was easier for him to get money and blow it. Well, Vanilla wasn't really George's thing. That was kind of a Rudy Ritchie thing. It was more of a Ray Lane thing. I don't know if George really... Like, if George could take the money and go out and do his own thing, I don't think he would have wanted to do... There's Always Vanilla. Maybe something like that, maybe in that vein, perhaps, but I don't think that would have been it. The way that it was made, kind of the collaborative effort that they kind of had on Night, because, like I said, by the end of Night, George wanted more control. George wanted to be the director, the visionary of what he was making, because he kind of, there wasn't a lot of tension. There weren't a lot of, they would go back and forth on shit in Night of the Living Dead, but they weren't butting heads or anything. They weren't fighting over every little thing. So, but I think by the time Vanilla rolled around, I think like I said, they'd kind of started to split. John said, so if anything, copyright may have made it harder to get investments in his films because of his blunder and also Vanilla Jack's wife and Crazy's failing. That's true. But do we get those 3 films? If the original version had been copyrighted? Who knows? Probably. I think, I don't know, that's a big question. It covers a lot of ground, but we would probably get something like that, because I think George had a lot of that money secured. I know Latent Image, I can't think of what the deal was there with Jack's wife and the Crazies. Can't remember off the top of my head. But I think he had that budget had kind of been picked up and kind of set aside for those for a while. They just didn't make any money, and George was in huge debt after that, which is why he ended up hooking up with Richard Rubenstein, and then the rest is history, as they say. John says, the 4K is fully copyrighted and endorsed by Image 10, so if you want to show the 4K, you need to authorize it by Image 10. I think you can still show the Continental prints. There you go. That makes sense. That's kind of what I was thinking it was, but I wasn't sure. Like I said, there's a little bit of gray area there for me. But people still don't get it and try to show the 4K thinking it's public domain, and it isn't. The OCN scan was considered a new work. There you go. That's what I thought. Because I've seen, people post it all over YouTube and shit all the time. And the guy that I was watching a thing where he was talking about, he got a copyright strike. And he's like, no, it's public domain. And he looked into it and he's like, yeah, but technically he wasn't understanding what... so that makes total sense, and I think he was probably trying to show, the best version possible, which is funny. On one of the Facebook groups, I guess it's one of the Night of the Living Dead groups, somebody posted, was like, this is the best version of Night of the Living Dead you can find on YouTube, and it was the 4K version. It's like, seriously? You're going to post that in the Night of the Living Dead group? And it's like, in a matter of no time, that shit was gone. Michael says, seeing Night of the Living Dead on public access introduced many people to horror and Romero. If the film were copyrighted, it wouldn't have been on television as extensively. I agree. I'm of that same mindset. I think it just got it out there to any and all who wanted to see it, and it got George's name out there. It got to the point. Where Russo can make films as the guy who wrote Night of the Living Dead, and that holds water with people. There's a cachet to that, that I don't know if he would have had if it was Night of the Flesh Eaters or Night of Anubis or whatever. John says, but the question is, it was called Night of the Flesh Eaters. Would Continental have them change the title? They only knew it as Night of Anubis and knew it wasn't a good title. I think they would have thought that was more marketable than Night of Anubis, for sure. Because, Night of the Flesh, there was a movie called The Flesh Eaters from 1962, but it wasn't Night of the Flesh Eaters, and it wasn't like it was a huge, successful movie or anything. It wasn't like they were ripping off Gone with the Wind or anything. So yeah, they probably would have preferred that title to Anubis. And I wonder if, like I said, if that Flesh Eaters print with the title Night of the Flesh Eaters actually did have a copyright on it. I'm not sure. But you're probably right. It probably was. They just weren't used to doing that. They didn't know any better, and they just fucked up. Since says with copyright, we never would have seen the offer. Yeah, the Ted Turner colorized version. Yeah, that's the goofiest looking shit. Anubis makes me think of some Egyptian historic epic. Not a good title either. Yeah. John says, admit that Anubis is better for the film because you don't know what Anubis is and you learn about the horror of the situation, but they don't really mention that in the film. It's not like it's explained what Anubis means in the film, it's just, I don't know, I think it was a little too highbrow for what they were shooting for. Actually, the reason why Anubis got changed was Continental didn't know what Anubis went and had to look it up in a dictionary. They went, nope, you're changing it to Night of the Living Dead. There you go. Yeah, smart move by them. I mean, you say what you want about them otherwise, but yeah, that was a smart move. Good change. Rick says, according to the movie, it suggested that a satellite with high level of radiation was destroyed when it hits Earth. Yeah, and that's actually based on, I think, something that actually did happen at the time. There's a piece on it on the Criterion version. Zombies actually written in the Night script as a description. Also, George describes them as zombies as two extras when directing them in Dawn, but it isn't in the script. So there you go. So yeah, I mean, the term, the idea of what they are is always kind of there, but I think it's always, to me, it's always like in a movie, you kind of assume that they don't know what a zombie is. Unless it's like Shaun of the Dead, and they're like, don't say the Z word type of thing. Like, well, we know what these are, but we don't say it. But it's more... Especially back then, because it was a new thing. Like, they didn't, the character shouldn't know what a zombie is. Because it's not like, it's like, oh, these are Draculas or anything, It wasn't a well-defined monster at the time. Since it's clearly Latent Image needed a project manager back then, or at least better continuity. Yeah, probably. Which is probably a big reason why George brought in Al Croft and that whole crew, and why after Russo and Striner left, and Romero brought in somebody who was better business wise, and somebody like Al Croft, and so I think maybe that may have played a big role in it too. As George saying, look, we fucked up once, like we need somebody in here that actually knows the business end of things, guys, because we fucked up. So Aaron says, regardless if Night of Anubis or Night of the Flesh Eaters or Night of the Living Dead, if you didn't hear or know what the movie was about, you'd think it was about vampires, Frankenstein, grave robbers, murderers, and not go see the movie. Well, maybe. But I do think Living Dead is a little more palatable than Flesh Eater, which sounds gross, and you're not going to get your teenage girlfriend to go see something about people that eat other people right in the title. And Night of Anubis is just confusing, and I don't think anybody knew what the hell that meant. All right, where was I? Trying to catch up on these here, and then we'll wrap it all up. You're nearing in on three hours tonight. It's been a fun one, guys. It's in question: were the Latent Image commercials copyrighted? If so, then they should have known about the copyright procedure. I don't think so. As John was saying, those were kind of owned by the companies that were paying for the commercials to be made. So, yeah, the clock tower bird just thrown away. Yeah. I would love to just see that clock tower again. Just once. I just want to see the clock tower. Rick said, I heard in an interview that Romero that one of the original endings for Night of the Living Dead was having the young Cooper girl zombie walking off into the horizon after all the other zombies were thought shot and burned. Maybe. I don't see that as a... I've never heard that. I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know if that would be good or bad. That'd be bad. I think the ending's perfect the way it is now. I think it's still effective, and I think they got it right with that ending more than anything. I think a final shot of Karen Cooper walking off into the sunset would just be, I don't know, a little too hokey. Aaron says, let's get the copyright back to Night of the Living Dead and Romero Estate so they will stop making screaming, running, jumping, and other non-lumbering suck-ass zombie movies. Yeah. Well, I don't think the copyright on Night of the Living Dead is really going to stop anybody else from ripping it off how they want. I mean, it's pretty much in the ether now. I mean, it is what it is now. Rick says, thus restarting the whole zombie infection once she found her first victim. I don't know. I've never heard that, but that's an interesting idea of an ending there. Larry says, latent image film Time Present was completed and has no copyright notice, John. So you were correct about them not putting notices on their work. That was before Night of the Living Dead. There you go. Further, see, we're figuring shit out here, guys. I think we're all coming to we're starting to figure out what happened here, that what went wrong for the latent image and the copyright issue that has plagued them for all these years. It's good, very good. Yeah, very good, very good. Rick says, in 1979, Night Dawn of the Dead, the zombie infection was already weeks in country. Did the movie ever explain what or how the dead came back to life? There's no more room in hell, man. No more room in hell. That's the only explanation you get. And I think that's as good of an explanation as any. I like that better than the Night of the Living Dead explanation, or that it's the Venus probe and all the radiation and stuff. I just like not knowing. Like it's just the mystery of it. Kind of like in Day of the Dead. I prefer that when it's like God just, trying to punish us. We got too big for our britches, trying to figure his shit out. Now it's he's put a curse on us. Let's see here. John says, yes, the work print is Night of Anubis. Like I was saying, by the time the work print was made, Flesh Eater wasn't a title anymore, so no title card was ever made. It was Anubis when Continental saw it. Okay, there you go. Interesting that they'd go with that name, though, of all things. But I guess, they kind of saw the issue with the other film, and yeah, terrible name, though. I'm glad that did not happen. That just sounds like, I don't know, a mummy movie or something. And you can watch Night of Anubis work on the Criterion release. There you go. Yeah, I've seen that. I watched that. They screened that Living Dead weekend in Evans City a couple of years ago. It was kind of cool to watch. I think they did that. It was the final thing they did that weekend. It was pretty cool to see on the big screen. John says, what I meant by vanilla is he didn't want to do another horror movie. John did want to do vanilla because that style of movie was hot. Distributors told him not to make it, and he did it anyway. Yeah, he definitely wanted to do something outside of the horror genre for sure. But I was just saying, like, vanilla really wasn't George's story. He wanted to show that he could do other things, and vanilla was probably, it attracted George because of that, because it wasn't another horror film. But I think George kind of regretted doing vanilla, because he hated that movie for years and years and years. Because I think he was just ready. He was ready to branch out and do his own thing. Like I said, he was ready to have full control over his next project, which he did with Season of the Witch. And whether you like Season of the Witch or not, I mean, it's definitely George. Like it's definitely a George film. Hoping they do another night in another genre, but the time Fat was over. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because it's funny, the movie came out in this early 70, 71, but it looks so late 60s. Like time changed so fast there in that period from the 60s into the 70s. It really stands out, especially when you look at Season of the Witch or Jack's Wife. I'm so used to saying Season of the Witch, but really, Jack's Wife came out, or would have been Hungry Wives, came out first. Jack's Wife, they shot it under. Hungry Wives is what it was originally released as. But it looks like a totally different time period almost, in a lot of ways. All right, so we got any ones? We're almost at 3 hour mark, so I'm gonna have to skip around here, guys. Try to get some overall thoughts on the topic. I still think Flesh Eaters would have still been successful, and because it was and local, they got a RDIC grant to make another movie only a few months later, so they did vanilla. There you go. Let's see, Matt doing something here. But yeah, I agree with that. I think, I do think it would have been successful. I don't think it would have been the cultural it would have had the same cultural impact as Night of the Living Dead has, by far. I just don't. Like, it would have just been something that played, midnight screenings and drive-ins and made some good money. I mean, it's easy to sell, there's an audience for that type of movie. But I don't think it would have spawned everything that it spawned after that in terms of careers, genres, etc. I just don't. Rick says, George said the draft of Night of the Living Dead he wrote was a direct reflection of the novel. Yeah. Yeah, he's mentioned that plenty of times. We kind of talked about that on the last stream when talking about Last Man on Earth and the Omega Man. You can see a lot of... I truly think that inspired George a lot, too, in terms of the filmmaking and the look of the ghouls in Night of the Living Dead, especially in, like, Last Man on Earth. What is this, Larry? I can't see. I can't click on that. I can't take me to it. There's no... I can't link it, but... Curious what you got up there. John says, I think Al Croft was part of the Leighton before Night was released. He was with them apparently when they drove the Prime of New York City with George and Russ. Yeah, he like their lawyer or something. He had some connection, but I don't think he officially was a part of the Leighton Image until after Night, if I remember correctly. Because he came in, maybe it was an ad agency or something that they worked with. He may have been, because I know there's an Image 10, the original 10 that put in the 600, but there was another 10 after that put in more money, because just to keep the budget going, keep the film going. He may have been like one of those guys on the outskirts, like Dave, what's his name? David Skipper. I can't think of the fucking guy's name off the top of my head, but he's a guy that nobody really talks about. Was a part of the original Image 10. But he kicked in the money and kind of worked with them on the outskirts, but he wasn't part of the actual company. The company itself was like 5 guys, the 5 people, or something like that, something along those lines. But I know he was brought in by George with George's wife Nancy and I think Bob Rutkowski was around that same time when things were changing. Russo and Striner left. But I could be wrong about that. That's what I remember the timeline in my head, just from what limited knowledge is out there and limited information for people to consume about that time period. So somebody made something cool on eBay. There's something cool on eBay. I'm gonna have to check it out after the stream. I did see the guitar, the red with the white black. I did see that synth. That was pretty cool. John says, also, I'm very sure that Night is the only film George gets money from. It's interesting. Expand on that. Explain that a little bit. I'm not picking up on that. Is the only film that George gets money from. Okay. I want to ask about Time President if it had a copyright. Wasn't sure if you would have known. So thanks for that. Yep, there you go. No copyright on that either. Since then, radiation was all the rage in the 50s, 60s, giant monsters, etc. Although radiation is a very general term, like light, yeah, being a form of radiation. That's true. It sounds cool, though. It sounds dangerous. Jack's hungry wife. Yeah, that that might have sold a few tickets. That sounds kind of interesting. John says with Vanilla they did the Ray Lane screen test and won some awards in '68, so they figured they could just flesh that out into an actual movie and strike while they had the money. There you go. If anything, I would say that fast success ruined them. Yeah, I think so. I think like I said, I think by the time especially just the idea of them all working, a film being community made, like everybody was kind of as equally as important. I think that it worked. It was a fucking small miracle that it worked once with Night of the Living Dead, but the fact that they tried it again and it didn't work, kind of, I don't think that there's a sustained. And I mean, I know it's the hippie dream that they all had back in the day, but I don't think there's a way to sustain that that working environment and continue to get positive results. I think there has to be a guy at the top with a vision and the final say so for things to really work. And I think George realized that, and I think that's kind of what happened after Night. Oh, Don Guitar Picks, 5 minutes left on the auction. So this was 4 minutes ago, so you're probably in the final minute of if anybody wants to bid on them. So, John said, I'm not sure when he officially joined. Al Croft worked at Ketchum with Nancy. That's true. Al wasn't an investor. I'd love to talk to his kids, but he didn't have any. Interesting. Yeah, I'd love to know more about Al Croft. That's a topic that me and Grande have talked about before in the past. Is, love to find out more about Al Croft and that time period. Him producing, the Crazies and all that around that time period. I'd love to find out more about that. John said, I think Al's title was vice president or something really high, which is why Russ and Russo left in 70. Yeah, it was something like that. He was like second in command behind George at Leighton Image at that point, which is, yeah. John said, I don't think George owns any of his films, but Suze has his shares from Image 10. I'm sure Peter G has the... Oh, that's true, yeah. God, that is true. Because, yeah, Rubenstein owns Martin, Dawn, Taurus Entertainment owns Night Riders, Creepshow, Day. Of course, the studio films, Monkey Shines, Dark Half. Yeah, that night probably is. I think Arrow owns the rights to Crazies, Season of the Witch, and all that because they did that box set. I think that's what I heard. I think maybe Larry said that. But yeah, that's true. I never really thought of that. But yeah, George, just from his portion of Image 10, that's probably the only thing that he still gets money for. That's interesting. Never thought of it. Greg Brewer, what's up, man? Good to see you in here. Hi, all. Hope all is well. I hope you're doing well too, man. I think I see you in the Dead Pit chat time every now and then. I think I saw you were in the you're in Crater's chat earlier. I dropped in on Crater's chat and listened to him talk about the Warriors for a while, and I think I remember seeing you in there. So it's good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping by. It's in a democracy with a dictator. That's what a director is, James Cameron. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how George worked. So, I mean, he was, the final say, the vision, the guy that, that it was his film. But, I mean, he was always open to suggestions and would always let the actors try new things. And, yeah, so, yeah, I can buy that. Since his sister-in-law worked at Ketchum for 30 years. I'd love to hear about that. I'd have to get you on and hear about that. Or get your sister-in-law, actually. You don't have to come on. Just see if your sister-in-law will come on. We'll get John on here and we'll have a back-and-forth interrogation, see what she remembers from that time period. But I guess 30 years ago, I mean, there would probably be nobody there worth, knowing. But that's interesting. That's pretty cool, the connection there. But yeah, so I mean, see if there's anything I didn't catch on. We're over 3 hours here, guys. It's been fun. I appreciate everybody hanging out. The chat's still, the room's still full. Chat's still burning up. It's Sunday night. I know we all got shit to do tomorrow, so I'm dreading that. I'm gonna have a short night of sleep. I'll tell you that. But I do think it's one of those interesting what ifs. It's one of the biggest debates that Romero fans have had for years, that Knight fans have had for years. And I've heard Gary Striner talk about this. He doesn't think that it would have mattered. He thinks that it still would have been as big of a success as it was if it did have the copyright. Now that's a whole other way to look at it. It's like, what if Night of the Living Dead was the title and it had the copyright? Would it still have been as big, even if it wasn't Night of the Living Dead? If it was Night of the Living Dead, but it was a copywritten thing for all these years, I think it would have been more successful. I don't think it would have been at, like I said, the cultural impact and all that as it's had as it sits. But I do think it would have been more successful than a Night of the Flesh Eaters or a Night of Anubis or anything like that, because I just think the title itself is interesting. I think it's palatable to a mainstream audience, and I think more people would have gone to see it on that original run. And who knows, and maybe it would have been more successful than we even realize. I don't fucking know, but I forget what the hell I was going to say there, but I'm burning out, guys. I'm about 3 hours into this, so I'm starting to wind down a little bit, but I think I pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover in that. Just kind of, yeah. Just kind of open the floor and let it out. But I mean, it's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting topic. It's one that we've talked about for many years. There's no way to know, but we can always ask, what if? And we did a stream like this a couple months back, a different what if stream, and it was what if O.J. Simpson actually had gotten the starring role in Dawn of the Dead. That one was kind of fun and kind of, I don't know, dark to talk about a little bit, but check that out. Go back and check that out if you get a chance. That was a lot of fun. These are fun streams to do. It's just kind of connecting the dots type of thing. It's like, oh, well, if that happened, this would have happened, and yada yada yada. And it's fun to get you guys' theories and thoughts. And honestly, I'm learning a lot tonight, just going back and forth and hearing all these different theories and takes on things and looking at it in ways that I hadn't really thought of looking at it before. So it's been really fun in here. I appreciate it, guys. John said it's funny because other people who weren't even involved in the film have more shares than George, but that's because people died and they were given to relatives and consolidated. Yeah. It's funny how that works, ain't it? According to the Rubenstein commentary of Dawn, he and George owned equal shares of Dawn. With it, decided that Rubenstein would make all the decisions concerning it. Okay. So maybe he was making a little scratch off Dawn of the Dead off all these years. I don't remember that. I have to go back and listen to that. Aaron says Flesh Eaters must have worked since Bill Heinzman made his 1988 movie Flesh Eater. Yeah, that's true. They did end up using it. And that's Russo's big claim to his creation of the monsters. It was his idea to come up with to make them flesh eaters and not just murderers. Let's make them flesh eaters. And I think that's brilliant. And I think Russo deserves a lot of credit for that, because I truly believe that's true. I mean, a lot of people debate whether everything Russo says is 100% gospel, but I believe that. I don't think anybody's ever really argued against that. I think everybody's kind of agreed on that. So I think it made a big difference. But yeah, Heinzman did take that term and make it work for him in the 80s. So it's been fun, guys and gals. Let's let the poor man go. I appreciate it. I just need a cigarette, guys. That's all I'm saying. Let me go smoke one. I'll be right back. We can do another 3 hours. But now I got to get up and go to work in the morning. As who owns George's Dawn shares now, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think he would have sold them off to anybody. Not that I've ever heard. Steve Mears, what's up, Greg? Great to see you here. Okay, so saying what's up to Greg. John says, does Christine get those shares from Dawn? That's an interesting point too. I don't know Christine or even Nancy didn't get George's shares for Night. Interesting. I don't think so, because they were divorced. Maybe, I don't know, maybe would it have gone to, as we were saying a second ago, would it have gone to maybe to one or all of his kids? I don't know. It'd be interesting. Greg, thanks for stopping in, man. Good to see you in here. And Bonnie saying good night, everyone. Yeah, let's start wrapping it up. Let me see if there's any other comments here. Larry saying go smoke. Good night, all. Everybody's saying good night. OJ making a better Michael Myers. Watch out. But all right, it's been a fun one, guys. I appreciate everybody hanging out and spending your Sunday nights with me. I'll be back next weekend with something else. Be dropping some videos throughout the week, and just keep an eye out. Do have announcement for next week. March is coming up, so there will be another March Madness tournament that we will play this year. A winner will receive, kind of the same way we did last year. If any of you guys played along last year, we'll submit a bracket and the winner will receive a prize, type of thing. I'm still working out all the kinks and all the information, but we'll be doing that in March. It's a March Madness tournament. We'll talk about it on the next stream. Check out shop.alpharomero.store. Got some t-shirts and designs and stuff on there. Check out, I just dropped a cool Morgan the Knight Rider design. So if you want to see Tom Savini looking as sexy as Tom Savini can look, if you want to wear that on a t-shirt, check it out. Shop.alpharomero.store. If you're new to the channel, make sure hit that subscribe button. Like the video. Helps get shit out there to more people. And you never know. You never know who this might get out to. But yeah, if you're watching this after the fact, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think would have happened to Night of the Living Dead if it had been released as Night of the Flesh Eaters or Night of Anubis with the copyright? What are your thoughts? Where do you stand on the debate? But appreciate everybody in the chat. I appreciate everybody watching after the fact. I will be back next week. Let me get it queued up here. I'm always behind on it. But until next week, you guys have a great rest of the night, great rest of the week, and as always, stay scared.